On the day Ethan officially left the company, Laura bought a bouquet of white roses home. The florist said, "With proper care, these white roses can last at least 7 days." Laura placed them in the vase by the door before leaving, as a final farewell, but until the roses withered and rotted away, they never saw the person they were meant to say goodbye to. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful novels every day. Now the story begins. Assistant Laura. The CEO has signed the resignation letter, but it seems he didn't notice it was you who's leaving. Laura listened calmly to Hour's hesitant voice. Last night, Laura found another woman's stockings for the first time in the home she'd shared with Ethan for 7 years. She thought she would hysterically confront Ethan, demanding why he kept cheating and trampling on her heart, but she didn't. She was even remarkably calm, from the love at first sight at 14 Ethan until now. A full 15 years have passed. This love she once believed to be unbreakable has finally come to an end. At that moment, Laura simply picked up the stockings, threw them in the trash, and calmly said to Ethan, "I quit." All I got in return was his contemptuous smile. "Would you really dare? Fine, if you want to resign, then follow the procedure." Laura nodded and left without a moment's hesitation. That very night, she drafted her resignation letter in the hotel and sent it to HR. Returning to the present, the HR manager spoke with increasing hesitation. "Executive Assistant Laura, are you really leaving?" "Yes, please arrange for the new assistant to hand over with me as soon as possible." Laura finished speaking and left the personnel department. She had just returned to her office when Ethan called her into his office. Ethan looked down at the report and gave perfectly normal instructions. "Reschedule this afternoon's meeting to tomorrow. And go get my newly tailored suit from home. I need to wear it for tonight's banquet." Laura subconsciously replied okay, only to see Ethan wave her away without even glancing at her. He still hadn't realized he just approved Laura's resignation. Laura gave him a look but didn't bring it up again as she walked out. After finalizing her schedule, she returned to the Driscoll residence and accurately picked out the exact suit he wanted from the pile. For 7 years, she did such tedious work without a single complaint, from handling major and minor company affairs to dealing with the complicated domestic chores of his family, including helping his mother send her grandson to school, settling his brother-in-law's gambling debts, and searching for a niece who ran away late at night. She was like a free customer service agent. Whenever someone had a mess to clean up, they'd come ringing her bell. But all of this would soon come to an end, just 30 more days. And she would be completely free, able to say goodbye for good to Ethan and his insufferable relatives. Laura returned the suit to the company at lightning speed, then quickly applied her makeup. At exactly 7 in the evening, she appeared punctually by Ethan's car, on the way to the banquet. She kept her gaze fixed out the window. The neon lights flickering outside were indeed more captivating to her at this moment than Ethan. "I bought you a Chanel bag and had it delivered home already." Ethan suddenly spoke up. "Stop wearing that long face. People didn't come to the banquet to see your scowl." Laura froze momentarily, recognizing this as the olive branch he was offering, and compliantly replied, "Understood." Seeing his expression relax slightly, she added, "I've been a bit tired lately. I'll stay until 10 at the latest tonight, then I'll go home." Ethan responded with an absent-minded as if he had heard her, yet also as if he hadn't. Laura turned her head away in silence, saying nothing more. At the banquet, Ethan left her aside and went alone to meet with industry veterans. Laura was content to stand idly in the corner, but someone couldn't resist stirring up trouble. "Laura, why are you standing here alone? If you don't follow Mr. Ethan, what if he forgets you at the party again like last time?" The woman covered her lips with a laugh. "Though, it's thanks to your thick skin that you can keep clinging to Mr. Ethan like this." Laura remained silent. "The woman before me had a fleeting romance with Ethan, and her jealousy was glaringly malicious. Instead of wasting your breath on me, you'd better figure out how to push other women aside and climb your way up," Laura said, glancing toward Ethan's direction. There, Ethan was seen holding a wine glass, engrossed in lively conversation with a new young woman. They burst into laughter, with an ambiguous undercurrent flowing between them. Similar scenes had played out countless times before, leaving her completely numb. Laura raised her wrist, watching the seconds tick by. At exactly 10 o'clock, she set down her glass, cast one last distant glance at Ethan, then turned and walked away without hesitation. She had waited long enough. It was high time to leave. Laura returned home, and by the time she finished washing up, it was nearly midnight. Ethan still hadn't come home. Laura didn't message to ask where he was, but simply fell asleep. Once upon a time, Ethan wouldn't come home, and she'd lie awake all night, wondering whose arms he was in now. For the first time, on a night without Ethan by her side, she slept soundly. Early the next morning, Laura was still lost in dreams. With a loud bang, The bedroom door was violently thrown open, followed by a shrill voice demanding answers. "Why are you still sleeping? Where's my son? Why isn't he home?" Laura was startled, then recognized Ethan's mother. "Don't you know your own son's habits? How many nights a week does he actually sleep at home?" She grabbed her clothes and said coldly, "Please leave first. I need to get dressed." Mrs. Driscoll let out a derisive snort before turning and walking away. Laura felt a surge of frustration but could only helplessly get out of bed and head to the bathroom. When she emerged, she unexpectedly saw Ethan, who had been out all night, now sitting on the couch. Laura merely glanced at him before calmly taking a seat on the opposite sofa. Mrs. Driscoll kept complaining beside Ethan, "I can't handle your girlfriend anymore. She even snapped at me when I tried to wake her up. No manners at all. Children from broken homes always lack discipline. If she ever marries into this family." "Mom," Ethan interrupted impatiently, "what exactly did you come here for today?" Mrs. Driscoll's face stiffened. "Isn't it that your uncle's child is about to enter high school? Do you think you could pull some strings to get them into City Y High? The teaching quality there isn't something ordinary schools can compare to." "Oh," Ethan responded indifferently. Laura suddenly understood everything, finally realizing Mrs. Driscoll's purpose for visiting today. Sure enough, Mrs. Driscoll quickly glanced at her, hinting, "Laura's mom is a teacher at City Y High, isn't she?" Ethan raised an eyebrow slightly, finally coming back to his senses and looking at Laura. Laura, however, spoke indifferently. "As you said, I'm from a divorced family. I haven't been in touch with my mom for a long time. Even if she could interfere, she didn't want to anymore. She had long grown weary of helping without ever receiving a word of thanks." Mrs. Driscoll glared defiantly. "Divorced or not, she's still your mother. How could she abandon you?" Laura remained silent, treating Mrs. Driscoll as if she were air. Ethan lost his patience at this. "Enough, Mom, I'll handle this matter." Mrs. Driscoll left reluctantly, despite her displeasure. The moment the door closed, Ethan moved from the opposite sofa to Laura's side, pulling her into his arms. A pungent wave of perfume hit her. Laura instinctively clenched her hands and turned her head away. Meanwhile, Ethan remained completely oblivious, resting his head on her shoulder as he said, "That's just how my mom is. She speaks without thinking. Don't take it to heart. Also, why did you leave alone last night? You didn't even send a message. That's not like you at all." Laura stiffened, a surge of complicated emotions flooding her chest in an instant. Ethan wasn't unaware of how difficult his mother could be. He had simply taken it for granted that she would handle the burden. And he himself, quite obviously, had not returned all night, only remembering her existence the next day. Even though she had already decided to leave, Ethan's words still wounded her. When would he ever realize that the human heart has its limits of endurance, unable to withstand his repeated injuries? People change, and I'm no exception. Laura broke free from Ethan's embrace and walked into the bedroom without looking back. "I'm taking the afternoon off, if you need anything. Ask your other assistant." Ethan frowned and stared fixedly at her retreating figure, only averting his gaze after a long while. 3 p.m. Laura arrived at a cafe as scheduled, where she saw the knowledgeable HR manager had already arrived early. Within half an hour, she had already negotiated all the details of her new compensation package after the job switch. Finally, the other party put away the agreement and quipped meaningfully, "Won't your boyfriend be angry when he finds out you're jumping ship to his competitor's company?" Laura paused with her coffee cup in hand. Angry, perhaps. But by then, Ethan's anger no longer concerned her. Laura fell silent. Just as her phone on the table suddenly buzzed, she picked it up, and Ethan's WeChat message glaringly pierced her vision. "What were you talking about with that knowledgeable person at the coffee shop?" Laura's pupils constricted. Right after, Ethan sent another message. "Someone saw you sitting with someone from City B." Laura regained her composure and casually made up an excuse. "Just catching up with an old classmate. It just so happens she works at City B now." "Soon," Ethan replied. "Got it. But in the future, you should keep your distance from people at rival companies. It doesn't look good for the company." Laura finally put away her phone. The whole company knew she was determined to leave. Only Ethan still thought she was just throwing a tantrum, believing a casual excuse could fool him, simply because he knew she loved him. So he was certain that no matter how much she suffered, she would never leave. A few days later, it was the opening day of the art exhibition jointly organized by the company and the gallery. Laura accompanied Ethan as they toured the exhibition with the person in charge for quite some time. After it ended, however, her gaze was suddenly drawn to a particular painting. The painting itself wasn't particularly remarkable. What made it special was, the place depicted in it was Ethan's confession spot to her, Dallas Lake. Laura involuntarily stopped in her tracks, Ethan halting as well. His gaze swept over the painting before he cheerfully slung an arm around her shoulder. "What? You like this one? Should I buy it for you?" Laura knew immediately he hadn't recognized her at all. She just smiled and said, "No need, there's nothing worth seeing." But Ethan insisted on buying the painting and had the gallery summon the artist. The moment the female artist appeared, Laura could clearly see Ethan's eyes light up. Only then did she look at the other person, fair-skinned and beautiful, exactly the type Ethan would like. But he'd truly forgotten he'd already pursued this woman once before, only to grow tired of her and cut ties. Laura smirked sarcastically as she watched Ethan speak gently to the female artist. "Where is the place in your painting? I think it's quite beautiful." He struck up a conversation with the female painter once again. He forgot that she was an old flame with whom he had briefly been involved, and he forgot everything that had happened between them in this place. At 22, Ethan had spent a month meticulously preparing for this confession, proposing to her by the shores of Urhai Lake in Dali. 30-year-old Ethan would also use their Dali Urhai Lake as a conversation topic to charm another woman. Laura was breathing irregularly. Suddenly she remembered herself drowning sorrows at a quiet bar with friends when she first discovered Ethan's infidelity. Back then, she thought alcohol could numb the pain away, but when her friend snatched the glass and demanded, "Ethan's trash, why should you compromise yourself for such scum?" She completely broke down at that moment. What else could it be? Because she couldn't bear to let go, because she thought Ethan would change his ways. Because she still wanted a future with him, that's why she pretended not to know anything, deceiving herself. But now, she was truly exhausted. Laura suddenly snapped back to reality, only to see Ethan glaring at her with displeasure. "What were you thinking about? Didn't you hear me calling you all this time?" Laura gazed at him vacantly, suddenly unable to comprehend why she had struggled so repeatedly all these years. So this was how it felt when love faded, looking back at the past. Everything suddenly seemed laughable. "Sorry, what's wrong? Do you need me to do something?" she asked, mustering her energy. Ethan handed her the car keys with a straightforward gaze. "I have something to attend to later, you can head back first." He instinctively wanted to come up with some plausible excuse, but then he saw Laura take the keys without hesitation. "All right, I'll go ahead then." Ethan froze momentarily, before he could watch Laura's figure disappear completely. The female painter beside him immediately hooked his arm. "Mr. Ethan, let's go." Ethan's attention quickly shifted as he smiled and said, "In such a hurry? Don't worry, there'll be plenty of wine for you later." Laura returned home, prepared all the materials needed for the next day's meeting. And only then did she go to sleep. But as the meeting approached the next day, Ethan was nowhere to be seen. Laura called Ethan, and the phone was quickly answered. "What's wrong?" Ethan's voice sounded hoarse. "President, you have a meeting at 9. Laura hadn't finished speaking when she heard a woman's voice on the other end of the line. "Ethan, why are you up so early? Won't you sleep a little longer?" Instantly, both ends of the call fell into silence. Laura stopped mid-sentence. Suddenly at a loss for words, this was the closest she had come to tearing off the fig leaf between her and Ethan. Just one more question from her, and their relationship might have ended prematurely. After a suffocating silence came Laura's calm inquiry. "President, you have a meeting at 9. Would you like me to arrange a car to pick you up now?" "Okay." Hearing Ethan's response, Laura quickly hung up the phone. She handled matters with the efficiency of a competent executive assistant. Only the faint redness at the corners of her eyes refused to fade. At exactly 9 o'clock, Ethan appeared punctually at the conference room door. Just as he was about to enter, Laura reached out slightly, adjusting his slightly crooked tie with polite detachment. Ethan was taken aback and was about to say something. But then Laura said calmly, "Let's go in." After the meeting concluded smoothly, Laura carried her laptop back to the office to finalize the meeting notes. Unexpectedly, Ethan followed closely behind into her office. "Laura, about this morning." Laura cut him off lightly. "I didn't think much of it." She looked at Ethan, her voice calm and steady. "But I still hope this kind of thing doesn't happen again. You're the CEO, being late isn't a big deal, but it's different for me. If you don't arrive at the meeting on time, it's my failure." Ethan tugged irritably at his tie, loosening what she had just neatly fastened. "Can you stop talking about work all the time?" Laura was taken aback, then suddenly laughed and asked lightly, "So you want to talk about feelings with me?" With just one sentence, Ethan was left speechless. Laura gazed at his features. Every part of him was familiar, yet at this moment he felt like a stranger. She suddenly couldn't remember how she had fallen in love with this person. Ethan was scrutinized by Laura's indifferent gaze, his guilt burning into anger. "I came here to explain things to you. If you're going to be this prickly with every word, then there's nothing more for me to say." Ethan turned cold and walked away without another word. He slammed the door with a loud bang, but it didn't faze Laura in the slightest. She even sat down as usual and began working, sending the meeting minutes to Ethan within 2 hours. Ethan read it but never replied. Just like that, the two inexplicably fell into a cold war. Ethan didn't return home for an entire week, determined to make her yield first, even assigning tasks originally meant for another secretary specifically to her. Laura endured all this until one evening after overtime work. She had just taken a step away from her desk when sudden stomach pain caused her to lose consciousness on the spot. When she woke up again, she was already in the hospital. Laura twitched her fingers, startling Ethan, who was dozing beside her. Dark circles faintly shadowed his eyes, and his voice was still hoarse when he spoke. "You're awake. Want some water? Let me pour you some." He spoke as he stood up to fetch her a cup of warm water. He bustled about attending to her, repeatedly asking the nurse, "Is there anything else we should be careful about?" For the next 2 days, Ethan stayed by her side without leaving for a moment. It was as if none of those past events had ever happened between them. And everything remained as beautiful as it was at the beginning. But when Ethan spent too long in the bathroom again, Laura quietly walked to the door and heard Ethan's doting and gentle voice inside. "Miss me? Have to see me? Never knew you were this clingy before." Laura suddenly found her vision blurred. All these days had finally vanished like a mirage at sea, disappearing as the mist cleared. Ethan had never changed. She had been momentarily bewitched. Forgetting she had long decided to let go and walk away, when Ethan hung up the phone and stepped out of the bathroom, Laura had already returned to her hospital bed. She gazed quietly at Ethan, as if waiting for something. Sure enough, the next moment, Ethan spoke up. "You're much better now, and I have work to attend to at the company. I'll be going first." Laura forced a smile. "All right, I understand." She watched Ethan leave just like that. Then got up to complete the discharge procedures with the attending physician. The attending physician flipped through the scans, but suddenly furrowed his brows. Laura felt her heart suddenly sink. The physician said, "Ms. Laura, you can't be discharged yet. There's a noticeable shadow in your stomach area. I suspect it might be a tumor." Laura's mind went completely blank. She opened her mouth to say something, but her voice suddenly failed her. The attending physician quickly reassured her. "Don't worry too much yet. From the scan, the shadow has clear edges which suggests it's likely a benign cyst. We'll run some further tests first." He asked again, "If surgery is needed, when will your family come?" Laura remained silent for a few seconds before saying, "No need to wait for family. You can tell me directly." Her father's health wasn't good. She didn't dare tell him about this. As for Ethan, there was even less need to inform him. She was about to leave, and her life would no longer have anything to do with him. The surgery was scheduled in a few days. Laura took another half-month off consecutively. On the day of the surgery, the Driscoll family's villa, Mrs. Driscoll pleaded earnestly with Ethan, saying, "Son, the Sun family's daughter is truly wonderful. Their family business is vast, and she's beautiful too. Just listen to your mother, meet her once and settle the marriage." Ethan looked at his mother with visible impatience. "I have a girlfriend," Mrs. Driscoll scoffed. "You mean Laura, TSK, she's from a broken home and has a sickly father to take care of. Marrying her would make us the laughingstock of our social circle." Ethan darkened his expression, extremely displeased. "Mom, stop it. I have no plans to get married now, but if I ever do, it would only be with Laura." He lost all patience and simply turned to leave. Back at the office, finding Laura absent from her desk, Ethan called her directly. At this moment in the hospital, Laura was following the doctor's orders to abstain from food and water. She answered Ethan's call, hearing his displeased voice ask, "Weren't you almost recovered? Why did you take leave again?" Laura clutched her phone and calmly replied, "The doctor suggested staying a few more days to help me recover. If you're fine, get discharged early. The company has been swamped these days. There's a pile of work waiting for you." Ethan said, as if suddenly remembering something, "Also, my birthday is coming up soon. Do you really want me to celebrate it with you in the hospital?" Laura only then recalled that Ethan's birthday was in half a month. She felt somewhat dazed. In the past, she would have started racking her brains about what gift to give a full month before Ethan's birthday. "Do you want me to celebrate your birthday with you?" Laura suddenly spoke up. Ethan chuckled lightly and said carelessly, "That's not how you should put it. Even if I said I didn't want to, you'd still come to accompany me, wouldn't you?" So certain, so dismissive, all because she had once loved him with such abject devotion. Laura curled her lips into a bitter smile. "All right, then come home early on your birthday. I'll cook you longevity noodles. Consider it our last meal together." Ethan readily agreed while muttering under his breath, "Longevity noodles again. Fine, it's settled then." Laura also replied. Then it's settled. The surgery went smoothly, and the tumor was confirmed to be benign after removal. Half a month passed quickly. Ethan was discharged from the hospital on his birthday. Laura, she returned home and cooked a bowl of birthday noodles. She wasn't much of a cook. Back then, she wanted to learn for Ethan. But he said, "Why would you need to cook when you're with me? You're here to be my girlfriend, not my maid." She believed him, so she stayed with him for 7 years. Only to end up knowing how to make this single bowl of noodles. The night grew deeper. Ethan still hadn't returned home. Laura called him. Just then, the door opened. Laura brightened and turned to look. At the doorway stood Ethan, his face full of surprise. Beside him stood an unfamiliar woman, their fingers tightly interlaced in unmistakable intimacy. Laura's gaze fell upon their entwined hands. The next moment, Ethan immediately shook off the woman's hand. "Why are you at home?" He quickly remembered their prior arrangement and calmly pushed the woman away, whispering reassuringly, "I have something to handle. You should go back first." The woman left reluctantly. Laura remained silent the entire time, a suffocating sense of helplessness slowly welling up in her heart. She didn't dare to imagine how many women had been in their home during her hospital stay, how many women had sat on her sofa, used her belongings, or even slept in her bed. Ethan hesitated as he approached, reaching out to take her hand. "Laura, don't be angry. I didn't even let her step inside our home." The ceiling light in the living room shone into Ethan's eyes. There was worry in his gaze, but no fear of losing her. Laura took a step back, avoiding his hand. "Forget it, let's just leave it at that." She thought she was strong enough, yet couldn't control the hoarseness in her voice. "I'll sleep in the guest room tonight. The birthday noodles are on the table." She went straight to the guest room. Ethan froze, then turned to see the long cold birthday noodles on the table, a sudden unease rising in his heart. The side of the bed had never been slept on before. Laura thought she would suffer from insomnia, but in reality, she fell asleep the moment her head touched the pillow. Late into the night, in her drowsy state, she suddenly felt someone lie down beside her. She was instantly wide awake, just as she was about to get up. She was completely enveloped by a familiar scent. Ethan murmured heavily in her ear, "I was wrong this time. I won't bring other women back to our home again." Laura stiffened all over. Then she heard Ethan say, "I ate the birthday noodles, every last bite." Laura stopped struggling and let him hold her. She closed her eyes and softly murmured "Amham." The noodles were eaten, and in a way, she had celebrated his last birthday with him. This chapter of their relationship was finally and completely closed. It seemed the matter had turned the page just like that. Ethan also seemed to truly recognize his mistake, accompanying Laura to and from work every day. Even on this day, he specifically made time to accompany her to the high school class reunion. Ethan, who usually never attended, received unprecedented enthusiasm from his classmates when he showed up this time. At the dinner table, someone teased, "Mr. Ethan, you and Laura have been together for 7 years now. When are you finally going to treat us to a wedding banquet?" "Exactly. You're the only couple from our class who made it. If you get married, you'll have to throw a massive celebration with dozens of tables," Ethan said with a smile, repeating words he'd uttered countless times. "Absolutely. When the time comes, we'll definitely invite you all to witness our wedding." Laura merely responded with a polite smile. Suddenly, the entrance grew lively. Laura looked up to see a gracefully swaying woman walking in from outside. It was actually the class beauty who never attended high school reunions. Also Ethan's first love, Alexandra. Alexandra beamed brightly, just as she had in memory. "Hi everyone, long time no see." Laura instinctively looked toward Ethan. Sure enough, he was staring intently at his first love whom he hadn't seen in over a decade, with an unusually serious expression. The atmosphere at the subsequent cocktail party was noticeably different. Ethan had eyes only for Alexandra the entire time, barely exchanging a few words with his actual girlfriend. The words about witnessing the wedding earlier had now turned into a joke. Laura calmly finished this meal filled with mixed emotions. When leaving, they stood at the hotel entrance waiting for the driver. Ethan glanced at his phone and suddenly said to her, "How about you go back alone today?" Laura no longer wanted to hear his excuses, simply gazing at him calmly. "Are you really leaving? Was he really going to deceive her again?" Ethan froze for a moment, hesitated briefly, then pulled her tightly into his embrace. Yet he said, "It's urgent, I don't want to either. Next time I'll definitely go home with you." With that, he released his embrace, and just as the bus arrived, he eagerly boarded and left, leaving Laura standing alone where she was. She watched in silence as the bus gradually disappeared from view. There would be no next time, this was the last. That evening, Ethan didn't come home. Laura packed her things and moved out overnight. Her 7 years' worth of belongings took barely an hour to pack completely, not even filling the smallest moving van. As she left, she placed the keys in the entryway. Nothing was left behind as the door was completely shut. The next day, Laura had just arrived at the office when Ethan suddenly informed her, "I'm going to France for a business deal. Remember to book the flight tickets." Laura nodded and confirmed again, "All right, I'll get adjacent seats." But Ethan refused. "No need for you to go. I'll be going alone this time." Laura paused in her movements. "All right." Ethan left just like that. After he left, not a single phone call came. A few days later, just as she was getting off work, Laura finally received a call from Ethan. "Are you not home?" "Yeah, I'm out." Ethan didn't ask what she was doing outside at this hour. He simply instructed, "Then call the security guard and tell him to open the gate for the person outside. Someone wants to enter your place." From this moment on, Laura no longer used the phrase "our home," but Ethan didn't notice. Instead, he explained somewhat smugly, "Didn't you say you didn't want to sleep in the master bedroom? I had everything in the house replaced with new items. Surely you can feel at ease now." Laura paused before saying, "Ethan, there was no need to do this, because she had already left their home long ago. Furniture can all be replaced, but what about feelings? Can long-shattered emotions also be exchanged for new ones?" Laura took a deep breath, barely maintaining her composure. "Understood, I'll handle this matter. Send me the contact number for the technician." After hanging up, Ethan gave her the number. Laura answered the phone and her first words were, "Sorry, we're not exchanging anymore." Meanwhile in France, Ethan hung up the phone, relieved, and turned to look at Alexandra. Alexandra stood in front of the Eiffel Tower, smiling at him, a radiant smile. Ethan couldn't help but step over as well. At that moment, a photographer suddenly approached and said, "Are you two a couple? The way you looked at each other just now was beautiful. Forgive me for taking a photo, I couldn't resist." Ethan and Alexandra exchanged a glance, an ambiguous tension flowing between them. Ethan smiled and asked, "Could you send me that photo, please?" The photographer smiled, "Of course, it would be my pleasure." Coincidentally, Ethan returned from France on the very day Laura resigned, as she was signing the resignation papers with HR. News came from France that Ethan had secured a major deal. Ethan waved his hand grandly and arranged a celebration banquet for the project team. Laura didn't want to go at first, but her project team insisted, "You're leaving soon, won't you hang out with us one last time, after working together for 7 years? You can't just disappear without saying goodbye." Laura felt a pang in her heart. The HR manager nearby smiled and said, "It's still early, as long as you're back before I clock out. I can still process your resignation paperwork." Laura had no choice but to go along with them. At the celebration banquet, the organizer stepped onto the stage, turned on the venue's projector, and cleared his throat. "Everyone, quiet please. Mr. Ethan has something to say." Immediately, Ethan's face appeared on the large screen. He delivered a concluding speech to everyone and once again congratulated them on the achievement. The manager boldly encouraged, "President, what's the use of saying all this? Why not send a red packet to genuinely motivate us?" "Exactly. I suggest creating a group chat where everyone can compete to grab them based on speed." Laura couldn't help but smile as well. Ethan naturally didn't mind this and lowered his head to send out several large red packets. "Look, I sent out quite a few. If you didn't grab one, don't say I didn't send enough." He held his phone screen directly facing the computer camera, swiping his finger up and down to prove to everyone that he had indeed sent out red packets. But with the phone facing away from himself, he didn't notice accidentally hitting the return button at the bottom. The next moment, his phone wallpaper appeared before everyone's eyes. It was a photo of him and Alexandra standing beneath the Eiffel Tower, gazing into each other's eyes with palpable affection. Everyone witnessed the moment, yet no one dared to speak. Ethan remained utterly unaware as he locked his phone screen and put it away. He even said something with a smile, but at this moment, Laura could no longer hear anything. She could sense the astonished gazes around her and the hushed whispers. In this moment, her last shred of dignity was torn away without warning. Yet Laura said nothing until Ethan ended the call, only then smiling as she looked at everyone. "As you all know, I'm about to leave my job, and Ethan and I broke up long ago. Isn't it a good thing that he found someone new?" Then it dawned on everyone. Laura still wore a smile, but the wine she drank tasted bitterly sour. After the celebration party ended, Laura called Ethan before returning to the company. "Are you back yet?" Ethan paused for a moment before replying, "Not yet. Might take a few more days." "Why, miss me?" Laura said calmly. "It's nothing. Just asking." She had wanted to say a proper goodbye before leaving, but he didn't even give her that chance. "Enough said, I have things to do. I'll hang up now." Ethan hastily ended the call like that. Laura returned to the company. Just then, she received a call from another assistant. "Laura, the CEO asked me to deliver some clothes to him, but I'm tied up here. Could you please take them to him? He's at Nightfall Bar." Laura was stunned. After processing this, she suddenly wanted to know what Ethan, who had just claimed to be abroad, was doing at a bar right now. Laura went to a nearby mall and casually bought a jacket from Ethan's favorite brand. By the time she arrived at the bar, barely half an hour had passed. She looked up at the old signboard under the night sky. It still hung crookedly above, just as it always had, unchanged in every way. She remembered how back when Ethan's company was first established, he would come here to drown his sorrows whenever he encountered problems he couldn't solve. He said this was his secret hideout. A place that could heal his soul. Later, she accompanied Ethan through hurdle after hurdle, until when they reached their current position, Ethan no longer faced any setbacks. They never came back to this place again. Laura walked slowly into the bar. She didn't even need anyone to guide her before spotting Ethan at a glance. And Alexandra beside him. They were seated at the very spot where she and Ethan used to sit, his eyes brimming with laughter as he gazed at Alexandra. He was smiling so genuinely happy, just as sincerely as he once did for her. Laura couldn't help but smile too. With reddened eyes, she whispered, "Goodbye." This farewell was meant for her own 15 years. How many 15-year spans does one have in life? Though her 15 years didn't yield a good outcome, looking back on the journey, she wouldn't say she regrets it. Only, "We'll never meet again, Ethan," at the bar counter. Ethan was laughing while talking to Alexandra when someone suddenly tapped him lightly on the shoulder. "Hey, a lady asked me to give this to you." Ethan turned his head to see the waiter holding a brand new suit and asking, "You are Mr. Ethan, right?" Ethan saw the familiar logo on the clothes, and his heart inexplicably twitched. He had specifically asked another assistant to buy the clothes precisely because he was afraid Laura would find out. But did this assistant also know he favored this brand? Ethan suddenly looked up toward the entrance, but among the bustling crowd, not a single face was familiar to him. Alexandra took the suit jacket with a smile and said, "Your assistant arrived surprisingly fast." Ethan snapped back to reality and changed what he was about to say. "Sorry, something just came up, I need to head back to the office." Meanwhile, on the other side, Laura returned to the company, where HR was waiting for her. The resignation procedures were quickly completed. Laura received her termination certificate. As she was leaving, the HR suddenly gave her a hug. "Thank you for your 7 years of contribution to the Driscoll family group. May you have a better future after leaving, with bright prospects and smooth sailing." It was the standard farewell blessing every departing employee received. At this moment, Laura felt an endless surge of bitterness in her heart. "Thank you, I will," she spoke solemnly. Making a promise to herself, at 6 o'clock, Laura walked out of the Driscoll family's corporate building, holding her box. Meanwhile, Ethan drove past the company entrance, heading towards the underground parking lot. They passed each other just like that, then walked in completely opposite directions. Ethan parked the car and went upstairs with Alexandra, who had expressed interest in visiting his company. Along the way, he encountered many people. They were all congratulating him on securing the French case. Ethan initially managed to force a smile in response, but gradually his smile faded. As he walked into the office, he happened to see his assistant carrying a large stack of documents out of Laura's office. He glanced at them. The top document clearly bore Laura's name. "Why are you touching her things? Laura doesn't like people handling her materials." Ethan frowned and blurted out without hesitation. But the assistant showed a hint of surprise on her face as she hesitantly replied, "President, this office needs to be cleared for the new assistant. Laura has already taken her belongings. The rest," she said, "are unwanted and can be disposed of as we please." Ethan's heart skipped a beat. A sense of foreboding flashed through his mind but vanished too quickly for him to grasp. "What do you mean by that? What do you mean she took her things?" He squeezed out these words from the depths of his throat, sounding utterly incredulous. The assistant froze for a moment before cautiously saying, "President, didn't you already sign Laura's resignation letter? Why are you now? And now you're acting like you know nothing about it." Ethan's pupils trembled as he instinctively retorted, "When did I ever sign Laura's resignation letter?" He stopped mid-sentence, suddenly remembering the resignation letter he had signed a month ago. He also recalled how he had been convinced Laura would never leave him, so he signed the resignation without a second thought. He had thought that resignation letter wasn't hers. Ethan paused for half a second, inexplicably glancing at Laura's office behind his assistant. He opened the door a crack, not too wide, and through the gap he could see the emptiness inside. Laura, when did she do all this? Had she planned to leave all along? Ethan thought of this, and a flicker of panic flashed through his heart. Turning back, I saw the silent Alexandra, my gaze drawn to the men's coat draped over her shoulders, and instantly my heart clenched again. "Was it you who brought me the clothes just now?" Ethan stared intently at his assistant, asking with some difficulty. "No, I was busy with something else at the time. It was Laura who delivered them for me." the assistant replied without hesitation. It's Laura, it's really her. Ethan's long-held uneasy suspicion had finally come true. He even felt somewhat dazed. Of course, who else in this world but Laura would be this meticulous? Why, knowing this full well, do you refuse to think deeper? Is it sheer arrogance, or a reckless confidence that even if it were Laura who came, even if she saw all this, it wouldn't matter because she loves you so deeply? The price of arrogance comes swiftly indeed. Ethan took a deep breath and turned to look at Alexandra. The affection in his eyes now entirely gone. His affections always came easily and left just as easily. Let's call it a day for now. I have other matters to attend to. Ethan didn't explain his relationship with Laura to her. Meanwhile, Alexandra made a move to take off the suit jacket from her shoulders before leaving. Ethan stopped her movement, hastily saying, "No need to return it. It's cold outside, wear it home." As he spoke, he walked away. Leaving Alexandra behind without even turning his head, Alexandra stood behind him, staring fixedly at his retreating figure, a mocking smile curling at the corners of her lips. She couldn't help but think, Ethan really hasn't changed at all, exactly the same as back then. A single heart can be divided into countless parts, making room for countless women. Everyone says that Ethan became the current philandering playboy because Alexandra went abroad and abandoned him. Only Alexandra knows that long before their relationship ended, Ethan was already entangled with other women. He was accustomed to showering affection on any woman who caught his eye, and given his power and striking looks, few women could resist his advances. Alexandra couldn't bear it all, nor could she accept becoming a woman consumed by jealousy. So she ran away. Abroad, she heard Ethan had found a girlfriend named Laura. For 7 whole years, Laura remained firmly tied to Ethan. And she thought Ethan had finally learned what loyalty meant. But now it seems Ethan hasn't changed at all. Even if a woman could follow him for 7 years without asking for recognition, Ethan could still turn around and get involved with her. Alexandra closed her eyes in embarrassment. She just never thought that one day she would become the very mistress she once despised. Ethan raced back almost the entire way, arriving at the Driscoll residence within half an hour. His fingers trembled slightly as he pressed them against the fingerprint lock. He dared not look inside, afraid of seeing the same empty scene as in his office, afraid to see Laura truly angry this time, so upset she hadn't even come home. Yet no matter what, he had to go in. Ethan took a deep breath, then pretended nothing was wrong as he opened the door and walked in. "Laura, are you home?" He stood in the living room, his gaze constantly surveying the surroundings. Nothing seemed to have changed. The sofa was still the same one, and even the bananas Laura had bought at the supermarket a week ago still sat on the dining table. After a week away, the bananas had developed black spots and were completely rotten. Ethan was suddenly overwhelmed with panic. Laura would never allow broken things in the house. Yet hadn't he also ordered a complete renovation of the home's decor just days ago? How could nothing have changed? Unless Laura never actually let anyone in that day. Ethan felt his temples throbbing painfully at that moment, 1,000 emotions tearing at his heart, all ultimately dissolving into panic. Involuntarily, he stepped further into the depths of the room. All traces of Laura had vanished from the bedroom. Not a single piece of her clothing remained, leaving only his own suits hanging in the wardrobe. The bathroom shelves, too, were bare of Laura's array of bottles and jars. Only a solitary tube of toothpaste and his half of the couple's toothbrush remained, abandoned. The balcony is gone too. Laura's potted plants, leaving only the imprints of flower pots etched by time on the ground. Ethan's face suddenly turned deathly pale. He paced step by step through this home of barely 100 square meters, his ears seemingly still echoing the words he'd spoken years ago when, after making a fortune, he secretly paid the down payment without telling Laura. Bringing her here for the first time. "Laura, this will be our home from now on. Let's make this place better together, using the next 30, 40 years to create our own home." Laura had reddened eyes from excitement at that moment. She tightly held Ethan's hand, confirming again and again, "We'll be together forever, right?" Yes, they would be together forever. Ethan never doubted these words, because he had never imagined what life would be like without Laura. Perhaps they would have gotten married and had an adorable child. Maybe by then, he would have stopped fooling around and learned how to be a good husband and father. But now, none of that is possible anymore. Ethan closed his eyes with a grim expression, because Laura had left him. Laura lay in her newly rented apartment, her mind completely blank. She deliberately emptied her thoughts, refusing to dwell on those messy matters anymore. The assistant sent her a WeChat message an hour ago. "Laura, the CEO knows about your resignation." Laura had barely read the message when Ethan started bombarding her with endless calls and texts. "Laura, are you breaking up with me, or are you just angry? I can explain about the phone wallpaper, but only if you meet me. I can't accept breaking up without a single word like this. Laura, reply to me. Laura felt not a ripple of emotion as she watched his incessant messages, even now. Ethan still thought their breakup was because of that phone wallpaper incident. She had already decided to leave when she first mentioned resigning to him. He didn't believe it, standing aloof and certain that she wouldn't dare leave him. Laura let out a deep sigh and swiftly added Ethan to her blacklist. Then, she collapsed heavily onto the bed. The world finally fell into silence. Laura had the best sleep she'd had in years. She slept so deeply that she completely lost track of time. She didn't know how long she'd slept until, in her groggy state, she heard frantic knocking at the door, knock after knock. Laura was forcefully dragged out of her dazed slumber. She frowned, exhausted, and casually grabbed a coat from the nearby rack before walking out, peering through the peephole. Laura clearly saw the face of the person standing in the hallway and immediately fell silent. It was Ethan. He stood outside with a cold expression, his eyes filled with an unshakable gloom. Laura hesitated for a moment, then opened the door. The door had barely cracked open when Ethan forcefully pushed it wide. He gripped Laura tightly with one hand, his palm burning hot. Laura, tell me, what are you planning to do now? Break up, or come back with me? Ethan took a deep breath and took a rare step back. I know I was wrong this time. I promise you, I'll never associate with other women again. He spoke his promise word by word, but this promise, Laura was already tired of hearing. In these 7 years with Ethan, she had told herself countless times that as long as Ethan was willing to settle down, there was nothing she couldn't forgive, but Ethan was really too presumptuous. He treated her love for him like a stone in his fist, wantonly using her love to smash her own heart. The impact left her flesh mangled and bloody, the pain making her question herself repeatedly. Was there really any need to keep going? Was there really any need to persist in such an unequal relationship? Laura suddenly felt her eyes well up with tears. She stared fixedly at the man before her, the man she had loved for who knows how many years. She reaffirmed her decision once more. She no longer wanted to be with Ethan. She was going to break up with him. Ethan. Laura forced a desolate smile, her voice trembling slightly. Her unusual demeanor made Ethan's heart suddenly tighten. Hearing his full name from her lips at this moment was almost suffocating. Ethan, Laura called out again. Ethan suddenly found his voice hoarse. After a moment of silence, he responded with difficulty. I'm here. Laura smiled, and this time, her smile wasn't as strained. Like a weight lifted after finally making a decision. Ethan, between us, it's too late. It's really too late. Her voice choked with emotion, yet she stubbornly forced out the words from the depths of her heart. I don't love you anymore, Ethan. Let's break up. A simple sentence, falling into Ethan's ears, yet it felt like a heavy hammer brutally striking his heart. In an instant, Ethan's blood seemed to reverse its flow throughout his entire body. The blood rushed to his head, buzzing, making it nearly impossible for him to think. What do you mean she doesn't love him anymore? Ethan stared blankly at Laura's face. The face was still the same face. The person was still the same person. How could she just stop loving him? Ethan clutched Laura's wrist with a death grip, as if trying to crush her bones. Laura, do you realize what you're saying? He forced the words through gritted teeth, his grip unrelenting until Laura gave him a proper explanation. Laura stiffened, her face paling from the throbbing pain in her wrist. Looking at Ethan in this state, she didn't hesitate for a second. Meeting Ethan's gaze, she slowly pried his fingers open right before his eyes. Her lips were pressed tightly together, silent yet more resolute than any words could be. Laura. Ethan gritted his teeth and called her name again. Laura finally freed her hand and glanced down. Though he had only gripped her wrist for a few minutes, a red mark had already formed around it. She let out a scornful laugh, eyeing Ethan coldly. Ethan, do you not understand human speech? I said, I don't love you anymore. Even the corners of her lips curled into a mocking smile. If you truly don't understand, I don't mind repeating it until it sinks in. Well, should I say it again? Words as sharp as knives pierced Ethan's heart for the first time. He stumbled backward in disbelief, his unsteady steps making him appear all the more disheveled. Laura watched. But no trace of sympathy remained in her heart. Her face hardened as she shoved him forcefully, just as he had entered her home uninvited. She now pushed him out just as abruptly, without his consent. Ethan hadn't anticipated this moment, a 6-foot-tall man actually being pushed out the door by her. The threshold marked the boundary. They stood on opposite sides of the door, one inside, one outside, just inches apart. Yet it felt like an entire world separated them. Laura stared fixedly at him, pursed her lips slightly, then spoke calmly. I followed the normal procedures as you said. All the paperwork is legal and compliant. As for our relationship, I've now officially broken up with you. There are no more ties between us. Ethan, let's not see each other again. She averted her gaze and, right in front of Ethan, closed the door. The door slammed shut with a loud clang. The cat's eye was right before Laura's eyes. Yet she no longer had the heart to look at it. Leaning against the icy door, everything before her gradually blurred. Ethan could stand outside if he wished. She wouldn't stop him, if he chose to leave. She wouldn't hold him back either. Outside the door, Ethan stood with a cold expression, his fists clenching and unclenching. His eyes were filled with struggle, hesitation, and anger. All the humiliating emotions surged into his heart at once, making him want to turn and leave immediately, yet inexplicably, another emotion tugged at him, rooting his feet to the spot, unable to move an inch. It's just a breakup, wouldn't Ethan ever lack for women? Ethan clenched his hand until his knuckles turned white. Inside the room, Laura, after pacing back and forth countless times, finally gritted her teeth and opened the door again. Ethan, she stared blankly outside. The empty corridor had long lost Ethan's figure. Laura smiled self-deprecatingly, her hand gripping and re-gripping the doorknob. At last, she let go completely, abandoning even her last shred of compassion along with it. From that day onward, Ethan never appeared in Laura's world again. As if he had finally understood her resolve to break up and no longer sought to humiliate himself, Laura was naturally pleased with this outcome, though beneath the calm surface of her heart, there lingered some regret. Not regret that Ethan no longer loved her, but regret that her 7-year relationship had truly come to such an end. She will get used to it, get used to Ethan completely disappearing from her life, get used to a completely new work environment. The knowledgeable boss values Laura highly. At City B, she is no longer someone's personal assistant, but herself even addressed as Manager Laura. This is just as well. At least she now has plenty of time to forget having once loved someone so fervently. Half a year passed in the blink of an eye. During this time, Laura did many things she had always wanted to do but hadn't gotten around to, like traveling across the country. Laura had long earned enough money to travel across the country, but previously gave up the idea because Ethan couldn't do without her and had no time to accompany her on trips. Now with both money and time, it was only natural to visit places one by one. Laura also bought herself several outfits in styles she had fancied but dared not wear when working as an executive assistant. She secured several deals at City B and quickly adapted to her job transition. Laura is gradually becoming a better version of herself. Having completely bid farewell to the trapped person she once was, early that morning, Laura got herself ready and hailed a taxi to her destination, the home of painter Caesar. Today, Laura's goal was to sign this painter, whose career had been skyrocketing since his debut. As a representative of the knowledgeable elite, at just 22 years old, his unparalleled painting skills have already astonished the entire art world. If she could sign Caesar, Laura would firmly establish her position at City B. So today, success is the only option, failure is not permitted. Caesar lives in a well-known villa district in the city, and Laura had to contact him personally at the security gate for permission before she could enter. Laura walked through the neighborhood, checking the villa numbers as she went, searching for Caesar's address. Just then, a car suddenly roared past her. Laura instinctively turned to look, her body freezing stiff. How could she possibly forget this car? It's Ethan's car. Laura fell silent instantly. 6 months had passed. This was the closest she'd been to Ethan since their breakup, and the first time she'd thought of Ethan. No particular emotion stirred within her. After those few seconds of abrupt silence, she simply continued walking as if nothing had happened. After going round and round, not knowing how many wrong turns she'd taken, Laura finally spotted Caesar's villa not far ahead. She couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief and quickened her pace forward. She walked around a row of decorative trees and stood firmly at the villa's entrance, pressing the doorbell. After waiting for a while, no one came out. Laura couldn't help but frown. She glanced at her watch to confirm she wasn't late, then pressed the doorbell again. Suddenly, the iron gate swung open on its own. Laura was startled but then stepped inside. The moment I stepped inside, I saw Ethan's black car parked in the courtyard. Has Ethan also come to see Caesar? Does he also want to sign with Caesar? Various thoughts flashed through Laura's mind, but her expression remained unchanged. The next second, the villa's front door swung open. Laura looked up and locked eyes with Ethan, who was walking out. At this moment, all other thoughts vanished. Ethan couldn't even remember his own name. How long had it been since he last saw Laura? A month? Half a year? Or had it been a full year already? He couldn't remember clearly. All he recalled was how carefree he'd been during the breakup, turning and leaving without hesitation, only to regret it the moment he stepped downstairs. Yet he'd forced himself to drive away, never once looking back. He even sped all the way home, his face dark as he pretended nothing had happened, washed up, and went to bed. When everything settled into silence, Ethan lay in bed, tossing and turning, unable to sleep. Unable to resist, he took out his phone and opened the WeChat chat interface with Laura. The glaring red exclamation marks on the screen were like thin ropes gradually tightening around his heart, threatening to draw blood before they were satisfied. The space beside him was cold, no longer carrying Laura's presence. The entire house had grown quiet, still, even desolate. Ethan was unaccustomed to such a home, yet the emotions surging within urged him to run back and beg Laura for forgiveness. His pride, however, reminded him, "You are Ethan. Without Laura, you've merely lost an efficient assistant and a compatible girlfriend. All of this can be found again. She wasn't one of a kind, irreplaceable." Ethan kept telling himself this, brainwashing himself, suppressing all his emotions. And so he no longer noticed his increasingly haggard reflection in the mirror, or the smile that never returned to his lips. Alexandra came to see him later, facing him with just one question. "Ethan, did you break up with Laura?" Ethan didn't care at all how she knew about his relationship with Laura. In that instant, he understood Alexandra's true intentions. "You can use me to forget Laura. I don't mind." Alexandra's eyes suddenly reddened. Ethan remained silent for some reason, stiffly saying, "No need, I don't require others to forget Laura." As if trying to cover up, he quickly added, "Besides, Laura isn't that unforgettable anyway." He repeated the name Laura over and over, as if telling Alexandra, yet also as if warning himself, Laura wasn't that important. The first week after the breakup, Ethan could still manage on his own, but the new assistant never worked as smoothly as Laura had, so at times like these, he couldn't help sighing. "Can't you learn more from Laura?" Quickly, the assistant got the hang of it. Seamlessly adopting both the lifestyle and work habits of Laura, Ethan rarely thought of her anymore. The second week after the breakup, Ethan would occasionally recall, while stuck in traffic passing the bakery at the street corner, how he used to get out there countless times to buy Laura her favorite macarons, then carrying it home to receive her delighted praise. At this moment, he'd feel a happiness greater than closing a major deal. The third week after the breakup, Ethan would inexplicably buy dresses that suited Laura when he saw them in shop windows while accompanying other women shopping, having them delivered to his room and hung where Laura used to keep her clothes, imagining how she would look wearing it. Gradually, the wardrobe filled up again, his clothes mingling once more with those women's garments. The fourth week after the breakup, Ethan would suddenly call out Laura's name without realizing it. When seeing a funny joke, he would blurt out, "Laura, isn't this hilarious?" When witnessing a sunset that painted half the sky red, he would snap a photo. "Laura, do you want to take a picture standing here?" When Mrs. Driscoll came over to cook for him and saw carrots on the table, she frowned. "Laura doesn't like these. Don't make this dish again." He didn't notice anything amiss with himself at all, as if he still believed Laura was by his side. Mrs. Driscoll immediately changed her expression, her voice trembling. "Ethan, please don't be like this, okay? You're scaring me. Laura has already broken up with you. If you miss her, go win her back, okay?" Ethan suddenly realized and looked around. There was no one left by his side, only himself walking alone in solitude. On this day, Ethan threw a massive tantrum. He kicked Mrs. Driscoll out of the house, then smashed all the dishes and the meals Mrs. Driscoll had prepared into pieces. As if only this violent outburst could bring him back to his senses at this moment, only then could he realize that Laura had truly left him, and what's more, Laura had dumped him, abandoned him, after lying dormant for a full month. This thought finally shattered him with devastating speed. But what followed immediately was an overwhelming emptiness. Ethan saw Laura's likeness in everything. Look up at the sky, and the clouds become her. Look down at the ground, and even the ants trace her form. Everything is her. She's everywhere. It's utterly maddening. Ethan could only cling to that stubborn shred of pride in his heart, telling himself daily, "Don't go looking for her. He wasn't that pathetic. I barely made it through these 6 months." The day of reunion came so agonizingly slow. Ethan had nearly believed this was where his story with Laura would end. Laura resurfaced once more, appearing before his eyes. Ethan was still standing there dumbfounded when Laura frowned slightly and addressed the butler beside him as if he were a complete stranger. "Hello, I'm Laura. We had an appointment to meet this afternoon." Ethan finally snapped out of it and suddenly said, "Caesar isn't receiving guests today. You've come for nothing." Laura finally looked at him, her eyes showing a hint of irritation. She clicked her tongue lightly, then heard the butler say apologetically, "I'm sorry. Our young master is in a bad mood today and can't receive guests. Perhaps we could schedule another time." Laura hesitated, frozen in place for a moment. Meanwhile, Ethan beside her had completely lost his composure. He kept muttering to himself, "Laura just clicked her tongue at me, right? I didn't mishear that. Did I? He stared intently at Laura, not missing the slightest change in her expression. But Laura showed no reaction, she didn't even glance back at him. Never mind what Ethan must be feeling right now, even Laura wore a pained expression. Caught in a dilemma. Don't leave. The butler already said Caesar can't receive guests today, but if she leaves, she can't explain it to the company. Securing Caesar is currently the firm's most important project. During this stalemate, a black cat emerged leisurely from inside the house, holding its tail aloft with slender elegance. A pair of eyes gleaming like obsidian were now fixed on Laura, startling her. Generally speaking, painters don't keep cats in their homes. A cat's nature is such that it can't resist turning the studio into chaos. How patient must a painter be to keep a cat at home? Laura couldn't help but crouch down and reach out her hand. The black cat meowed and immediately wound itself around Laura, its tail even coiling around her arm. Laura stroked the black cat's spine with the back of her hand, coaxing it to roll onto its back and expose its soft belly. The butler stared at this scene in astonishment. Before he could ponder further, a clear male voice rang out from within the villa. "Chad, let that woman in." Laura gasped as she peered into the villa, but it was too far away. She could make out nothing except a vague dark figure standing on the stairwell. Behind her, Ethan let out a cold snort before turning to leave without saying a word. Laura paid no attention to any of this. After expressing her thanks, she walked straight into the villa. The black cat followed closely behind her, not making a sound. Laura nervously approached the figure, her gaze burning with intensity. Suddenly, the lights in the hall blazed brightly, illuminating the living room and the figure standing on the staircase. The man sat on the stairs, his neatly buttoned collar slightly open to reveal pale collarbones, propping his head up with a lazy, casual air. Hearing the sound, his thick lashes trembled slightly before he lifted his gaze unhurriedly. A pair of deep eyes fixedly gazed at Laura. Laura held her breath, afraid to disturb the man before her. Caesar's appearance was the most outstanding she had ever seen since birth, and his demeanor was the most extraordinary, as if all the mundane things of this world were unworthy of his gaze. And the black cat walked from behind her to his feet, meowing a few times, instantly shattering his aloofness. "Buddy, I told you not to bark randomly. I need quiet to find inspiration. Understand? Your barking won't help." Laura, her pupils trembled slightly. She politely concealed her surprise, then glanced at Caesar, who was being incessantly meowed at by Buddy, and tentatively suggested, "Could it possibly be because Buddy is hungry? I just felt its belly, it's sunken, as if it hasn't eaten for days." Caesar immediately showed signs of irritation on his face. "I fed it, but it absolutely refused to eat. What else could I do?" He then turned to Laura and said matter-of-factly, "Buddy just took a liking to you, so you must know some way to get Buddy to eat." Facing Caesar's eager gaze, how could Laura possibly say no? Besides, she was only allowed in because of Buddy. Perhaps by resolving Buddy's issue, she might get a chance to discuss the contract with Caesar. Laura smiled confidently and said firmly, "May I take a look at what you've been feeding Buddy?" Caesar stood up from the stairs upon hearing this and walked toward the corner. There sat a bowl, its logo belonging to a top-tier domestic brand, yet he had casually repurposed it as a cat dish. Laura sighed inwardly, then froze in place the next moment when she saw the contents of the bowl clearly. "These are all things you eat." She crouched down and rummaged through it. Guessing this was probably what Caesar had for lunch, he'd casually dumped it in here. No wonder Buddy wouldn't touch it. Seriously, does this guy have any common sense? Laura thought to herself, but kept a straight face. Caesar said with righteous indignation, "Yeah, what's the problem?" Laura said nothing, picked up the bowl and went into the kitchen, dumping it into the trash bin right in front of Caesar. "If you don't know how, you could ask someone else for help. Your chef must know how to make cat food." As she took the raw beef from the refrigerator, she glanced back at Caesar. She saw that he was completely dazed, murmuring softly, "This is my cat. I don't want anyone else to take care of it." Laura gave him another surprised look, quickly frying the beef, slicing it into small strips, and placing them in the cat's bowl. At that moment, Buddy happily pounced on it, finally enjoying a full meal. Laura felt relieved and looked up at Caesar, only to find him staring intently at Buddy, his eyes filled with an overwhelming sadness. As if sensing her gaze, Caesar quickly masked the emotions in his eyes. "All right, you helped me. What do you want in return?" He had once again become that nonchalant man. Laura pursed her lips, her hand stroking Buddy rhythmically. After a moment's thought, she finally spoke. "I came today because there's something I'd like to discuss with you. I'm the manager of City B, and I'd like to sign you to handle the commercial promotion of your works for the next few years." Caesar's smile faded slightly. "So that's how it is." He glanced at Buddy lying obediently under Laura's hand, then suddenly said, "All right, I accept." Laura had barely begun to smile when she heard him add another condition. But you'll have to teach me how to care for a cat until I can do it independently. Laura couldn't imagine what could possibly be difficult about raising a cat. Perhaps when the cat falls ill, some people might not know what to do. The buddy before her, with its healthy coat and condition, should theoretically pose no issues for raising such a cat. But Laura recalled that Caesar would share his meals with the cat, and suddenly felt it was absolutely necessary to teach Caesar how to properly care for a cat. Otherwise, one day Buddy might starve to death, and Caesar would still blame it on the cat being picky. Laura agreed to the collaboration without hesitation. Caesar held the cat and went upstairs. When he came back down, he was holding a key in his hand. He looked down at Laura, yet it didn't make her feel uncomfortable. This is the key to my place. You can come whenever you want. I'll also explain it to the security guard. He won't stop you in the future. Laura took the key in surprise and was about to ask him, "Aren't you afraid I might steal from you or have other intentions?" Turning her head, she immediately saw Chad watching her cautiously, and suddenly everything became clear. It seemed there was still a normal person in this household. Laura was escorted out by Chad when she left, his attitude having warmed considerably since her arrival. After much hesitation, she finally asked, "Chad, if your young master doesn't know how to care for cats, surely you must." Chad stroked his beard meaningfully and said, "I do know how, but the more you understand the young master, the clearer it becomes. His things can only be touched by him. It's not our place to interfere. Besides, the young master would never consult us. If you hadn't happened to catch him in a good mood today, he might not have even spoken up to stop you." Laura felt one layer of her confusion lift, only for a deeper mystery to quietly emerge. Unable to make sense of it, she simply chalked it up to the eccentricities of an artist. With an awkward smile, she turned and walked away. Chad said unhurriedly from behind, "Miss Laura, see you tomorrow then." Laura responded absent-mindedly. As she stepped out of the villa, a black car pulled up steadily in front of her. The door opened, revealing a pair of polished leather shoes in her line of sight. Laura stiffened, raising her head to meet Ethan's furious gaze. "A full hour, Laura. You spent an entire hour alone in a strange man's house." He spoke through gritted teeth. Laura immediately frowned and retorted unhappily, "What I do there and how long I stay, tell me. What business is it of yours?" Ethan felt a twitch between his eyebrows. He instinctively moved closer, only to see Laura take a large, disgusted step backward. "Ethan, if you have something to say, don't stand so close to me." She spoke the most cutting words without even blinking. "Ah, no, what could we possibly have left to say to each other now?" Ethan gazed at the long-extinguished affection in her eyes, feeling as though his heart had been scorched by raging flames. In an instant, all the emotions he had suppressed for the past 6 months came surging back. "What do you mean there's nothing to say, Laura? I have so much to tell you, but only if you'll give me the chance to speak." He looked unusually sincere. Laura just wanted to scoff. "Ethan, since when did I not know you'd stoop to pestering an ex-girlfriend?" Ethan's face instantly darkened. Laura didn't hold back, instead looking at him with even more mockery. "Do those women you dumped know how pathetically you're clinging to me now? Weren't you the one who boasted you'd never lack for women? So why are you still bothering me?" Feeling masochistic, Ethan immediately darkened his expression. Without another word, he turned and got into the car. He had his own pride, being wounded by Laura like this. It was impossible for him to stay. "Laura, you're only able to hurt me so brazenly because you know I still have feelings for you." Ethan, having imagined who knows what in his mind, left after dropping this ambiguous remark. Laura absurdly watched him leave, for the first time in her life wondering if her words had been too light, making Ethan misinterpret them to such an extent. Ethan understands the word like. Laura smiled self-deprecatingly, fell silent for a moment, and finally sighed in a daze. After returning home, she copied and uploaded the contract with Caesar to the company group chat, immediately receiving a like from the boss. "I knew I wasn't wrong about you, Laura. This is Caesar's first time signing with a company. With his fame, our next quarter's art exhibition is bound to leave everyone in the dust." Laura had originally typed out a long explanation for why Caesar agreed to sign, but upon seeing the boss's excitement, she quietly deleted it all. As long as she could take good care of that cat, this contract probably wouldn't cause any trouble, right? Laura stared blankly, lost in thought. The very next day, something went wrong. The time for feeding the cat coincided with another case she had to handle. Laura recalled that the male assistant also had a cat at home, so it shouldn't make much difference if he went instead. Thus, she asked him to go to Caesar's place to feed the cat. An hour later, the male assistant called. "Laura, Caesar kicked me out. He said if I wasn't willing to cooperate with him, I shouldn't have agreed to this matter yesterday." The male assistant hesitated and said, "Caesar seems Angry because you didn't show up. Laura was shocked. Come back first, I'll handle this myself. After hanging up the phone, she felt a headache coming on, never expecting Caesar to be that kind of person. She quickly called Caesar, but each call was promptly hung up. With no other options left, she had to speed up her work and finally wrapped up the process 2 hours later, immediately hailing a cab to Caesar's place. Pushing open the Lin family's door, she saw Chad sitting there as calm as you please. When she arrived, he casually remarked, "You're finally here, it's nothing much. Just that the young master has been waiting for you since noon until now." "Oh, right, the young master hasn't had lunch yet." He smiled and said nothing more. Laura felt a throbbing headache coming on. Glancing at her watch, she saw it was already 4 p.m. Caesar hadn't even eaten while waiting for her. She gave an awkward, tight-lipped smile and quietly went upstairs. Pushing open Caesar's bedroom door, she saw a lump curled up on the bed. A few strands of black hair peeked out from under the blanket. Buddy curled up beside him, both perfectly still. Laura felt an inexplicable pang in her heart, something vague and indescribable. "Get out," Caesar muttered without looking up, already knowing it was Laura. Laura closed the door, walked to his bedside, and gently tugged at his blanket, but it didn't budge. "Caesar, let's get up and have a meal." "Okay," Caesar only responded with a cold laugh. While Buddy was startled awake and began barking incessantly at her, provoked beyond endurance, Caesar flipped over and angrily shouted at Buddy, "Enough, stop barking, she doesn't care about you at all. The promise she made just yesterday is already being brushed off today. Why are you still trying to win her favor?" Laura was left speechless. Caesar's thinly veiled scolding truly made her feel guilty. After a long while, she cautiously approached, coaxing him like a child. "All right, I'm sorry, it was my fault." Seeing Caesar show no reaction, Laura then whispered, "Let me cook you a meal to make it up to you. Would you like that?" No sooner had she spoken than Caesar widened his eyes. Staring motionlessly at her, Laura couldn't help but chuckle. Caesar looked no different from Buddy in this state. Perhaps realizing he was getting a bit too excited, Caesar cleared his throat and casually remarked, "You're cooking yourself." Laura nodded vigorously and declared with confidence, "Of course. My skills are nothing short of miraculous. So, Caesar, care to try some?" Caesar looked at her suspiciously, and after a long while, gave a reserved nod. "Very well. I shall reluctantly sample a bite or two." Half an hour later, the entire villa was left with only Laura and Caesar. Chad had vanished without notice, leaving the vast living room filled only with the sound of their uneasy breathing. Caesar stared in disbelief at the meal Laura had specially prepared for him on the plate. A bowl of golden fried rice with eggs. He immediately glared at Laura and complained, "Is this what you called miraculous?" Laura, however, remained unfazed and instead asked first, "Did you learn how to make it? If I'm not around in the future, at least you and Buddy won't go hungry with this." It seemed she never considered the possibility that the Lin family might not actually go hungry. Caesar. It was only when she saw Caesar's slightly pale face after 4 hours without food that she immediately decided to teach this pampered young master a dish that was both simple and quick to make. Especially since Buddy could also make do with a few bites. Caesar froze for a moment, silently staring at the fried rice before him before suddenly saying, "I've learned it." "So, after learning, will she still make it for herself?" Caesar continued to ponder as he picked up the spoon beside him and slowly ate. Laura watched with delight as Caesar ate, feeling a surge of motherly affection in her heart. Only after Caesar finished every last bite did she contentedly put away the dishes. Then sat down opposite Caesar once more. "Today, our goal is to assemble the cat tree. The package is already at the door, you can go unpack it, and I'll teach you step by step." Caesar shuffled to the door in his slippers. After unpacking, he sat amidst a pile of scattered parts. Clutching the instruction manual with a serious expression, Laura walked over and sat down beside him. Pointing to the steps in the instruction manual, she taught him little by little. Caesar was an extremely clever person to begin with. Mastering it immediately, he began huffing and puffing as he assembled the cat tree. Laura watching with great interest from the side. "Young master has truly grown up." Chad suddenly sighed behind him. Laura was startled into a cold sweat by this remark. Turning to look at him, she exclaimed in surprise, "Chad, is this really something worth praising?" Chad merely smiled without speaking. Laura couldn't help feeling curious and turned to look at Caesar, but just as he reached the top, his grip tightened too much, and the cat tree collapsed with a loud crash. Caesar sat there dumbfounded, looking utterly at a loss. Chad let out a sigh and stepped forward to clean up the mess. Laura strode toward him with a smile and said, "Not bad at all, you've managed to assemble it quite well just by following the instructions. You know, the first time I tried, I couldn't even make sense of the manual." Caesar's eyes suddenly lit up. He stared at her intently and asked, Really? Laura nodded and pointed to a support point on the cat tree. Here, try flipping this part the other way. I'll watch you do it. Her smile was gentle. Without a trace of condescension or any other peculiar expression, Caesar suddenly tasted a hint of bitterness, followed by waves of overwhelming joy, yet he tightly pressed his lips together. Unable to suppress his smugness as he declared, "This time, I'm definitely going to get it right." Chad stood not far away, watching the scene, and suddenly felt a lump in his throat. Perhaps it's truly time for him to let go. What's done is done. Why remain trapped in the past, bound forever without escape? Caesar seems to have found the key that unlocks his heart, that key named Laura. The cat tree was Laura's first taught item to Caesar in crafting, during their subsequent interactions. She was astonished to discover that Caesar was completely blank about all common daily knowledge. He was like a child who could do nothing except draw. The spacious villa had no second visitor besides her occasional presence. Not a single other soul would appear. Occasionally it was Chad who went to the kitchen to prepare bland meals for him, and other times Laura did the cooking, while Caesar would sit at the dining table early, watching expectantly as dish after dish was brought out. Laura rarely felt a sense of being needed and valued as she did with Caesar. It was as if this man's world was so narrow it could only accommodate Chad and Buddy, and her. Laura also discovered that apart from painting, Caesar's favorite activity was sleeping. He could fall asleep instantly, sleeping from day to night and then from night to day, in an endless cycle. Laura initially suspected he might be some kind of special patient, but after teaching him everyday knowledge, Caesar seemed no different from anyone else. At most, he was just a sleepy, homebody painter who marched to the beat of his own drum. They had been together for over a month. Laura could now confidently say that she was Caesar's best friend, although Caesar had been dragging his feet all month, not finishing a single painting he promised her. With pressure from City B, Laura wanted to urge him a bit but didn't know how to bring it up. Then one day, Laura had just arrived at the villa when she heard a tremendous explosion. The sound came from the second floor. Startled, she rushed to the source, Caesar's bathroom. She tried to push the door open, but Caesar stubbornly refused to unlock it. The sound of rushing water inside was deafening, likely a burst pipe. "Caesar, let me in, it's dangerous, don't you understand?" But from inside the bathroom came Caesar's muffled voice. "No, I can handle this myself." Laura could only wait. But after just a short while, the sound of running water didn't stop. Instead, it grew louder. Growing more impatient, she resorted to threats. "Caesar, are you opening the door or not? If you don't, I'm leaving right now." The bathroom fell silent for a moment before, slowly, the door opened. Standing before her in nothing but a white shirt, Caesar had red-rimmed eyes, his entire body dripping wet. The fabric clung to his lean frame, making it practically indecent to look at. Laura felt her ears burn instantly, her gaze darting around aimlessly. She muttered something incoherent and sidestepped him, heading toward the bathroom. Sure enough, the showerhead in the bathroom seemed to have malfunctioned, putting on a show of celestial blossoms scattering in all directions. Laura braced against the splashing water, pressed the switch, and found it useless. From behind came Caesar's innocent voice. "I pressed it earlier, but it didn't work, the water wouldn't stop." Laura hummed in acknowledgement but said nothing more. Walking further inside, she found the main water valve and gave it a gentle twist. The water stopped instantly. Unaware of the suddenly quiet atmosphere behind her, she said softly, "This main valve controls all the water supply. If it bursts next time, you can just turn this." There was no response from behind. Laura only then realized something, straightened up and looked back. Caesar stood grim-faced at the doorway, hand braced against the doorframe, silent. His brown curls clung to his face, dripping with water, a truly pitiful sight. Laura was once again dazzled by good looks. Coming to her senses, she felt somewhat embarrassed and changed the subject. "Ask Chad to call a plumber over." At the same time, Caesar also spoke up. "Laura, do you think I'm an idiot?" Laura was taken aback. She didn't answer the question immediately, instead grabbing a nearby towel to wipe the water droplets from her body. "Do you have any clothes here that would fit me?" Caesar finally snapped out of it and ran outside to find clothes for her. Laura silently watched the trail of wet footprints on the floor, then after a long pause, let out a deep sigh. When both had changed clothes and were sitting in the living room, Chad led the repairman upstairs to fix the pipes. Laura stared intently at Caesar, who turned his face away, unable to meet her gaze. "Caesar, are we friends?" Caesar muttered in response. "Of course, we're each other's only friend." Laura startled again, a sour ache welling up in her heart. "Then let me ask you, if I knew nothing about painting, if I only caused you trouble, would you think me utterly useless?" Caesar thought carefully and shook his head with sincerity. His youthful yet handsome face was full of earnestness. "No, I know you've never tried painting before. Laura let out a sigh of relief before continuing solemnly, by the same logic. I know you were previously well protected by Chad, which is why you lack common knowledge. How could I possibly think that's your fault? But I don't want you to look down on me, Caesar blurted out urgently, his expression now carrying an uncharacteristic seriousness. I want to be able to handle my own affairs, not be like a machine that can do nothing but paint. Laura frowned slightly. How could you think that way? Painting is your gift. Some people spend their whole lives without excelling at anything, yet you're already incredibly good at painting. There's absolutely no need for you to be this anxious. Perhaps it was a certain word in her speech that struck Caesar. His eyes reddened instantly, standing up. His 6-foot frame nearly blocked all the light from her. Painting, it's always about painting. In your eyes, do I have no other merits besides painting? Laura's pupils trembled slightly. She couldn't comprehend Caesar's abrupt transition between the previous topic and the current one. There should have been no connection between them. That's not what I meant. It's... Caesar interrupted her for the first time, his expression cold and unfamiliar, mixed with a trace of rejection she'd never seen before. I forgot, you came to me in the first place for my paintings. It was me who crossed the line these days, treating you as my... He struggled to speak through choked sobs. Friend. Laura was at a loss for words. She stood up in panic, looking at Caesar before her, keenly sensing something. Caesar perhaps. Her feelings for him went beyond friendship. Laura didn't know what to say at this moment. Perhaps she should comfort him. She knew Caesar was soft-hearted. Just a few comforting words from her would mend their relationship. When it comes down to it, this matter isn't that serious. He didn't want her to think he came just for his paintings. She could easily transfer Caesar's contract to someone else. Caesar was no longer the awkward, naive up-and-coming painter she had known just a month ago. In truth, he was a very thoughtful person, willing to set aside his pride to comfort her when work weighed her down. He would even bring Buddy along. The two of them sketching together in the park. Caesar would even remember to bring her local specialties when he went out. He would always call her name in a syrupy tone, over and over. Laura, Laura, whose expectations do you really belong to? The sincerity behind his jokes had long seeped imperceptibly into Laura's life. She just never realized it. Laura never imagined she'd be liked by a man 7 years her junior. No, he could barely even be called a man yet. In the absurdity of the moment, Laura stood up in a fluster, facing Caesar's reddened eyes. She chose to flee in panic for the first time in her life. I'm leaving first, Caesar. We'll talk about anything else later. She left just like that, never seeing the silent yet stubborn gaze behind her from Caesar. After that day, the two inexplicably fell into a cold war. Laura couldn't figure out her feelings for Caesar, so she didn't dare call him again. The erudite art exhibition was imminent. So she had no choice but to find another painter and display his works at the exhibition. Though not comparable to Caesar, it was at least free from errors. On the day the exhibition opened, Laura was all smiles greeting guests when her male assistant pulled her aside. His first words were earth-shattering. Laura, our paintings have been exposed as plagiarized. Laura was instantly stunned, her mind going completely blank. When she came to her senses, she quickly had the painting removed. But it was already too late. The internet erupted with waves of accusations. The artist's plagiarism had been irrefutably exposed. The exhibition was forced to shut down. Investors withdrew their funding, and compensation demands snowballed toward Laura. Fortunately, the knowledgeable party agreed to cover the compensation, but in return, she was suspended from her position. In the blink of an eye, the world turned upside down. Laura hadn't left work on time for a long while because of this matter. After yet another late night at work, she wearily returned to her doorstep only to find a tall figure standing at her door. In a daze, she almost mistook him for Caesar. Upon closer look, it turned out to be Ethan, whom she hadn't seen in ages. Seeing him again this time, Laura felt not a single ripple in her heart. She didn't even want to speak to him anymore. Stepping around him to reach for the door. Laura, do you really not want to see me that much? Ethan spoke hoarsely, even with a hint of sadness in his voice. Laura shook her head. She must be so exhausted she was hallucinating. How could she ever hear the word sadness in Ethan's words? I don't want to see you, she said it bluntly, cold and resolute. Ethan felt as if his heart had been pierced in that instant, a chilling coldness drilling straight into his core. Laura, look at me. He firmly turned Laura to face him, gazing at her with desperate hope. I've thought hard this past month, and I still can't accept the outcome of losing you. I surrender. Laura, let's get back together. Okay. Proud as Ethan was, there came a day when he would grovel to beg Laura for reconciliation. Laura watched him coldly, feeling neither satisfaction nor sorrow. Ethan, stop pestering me. She just kept repeating the same words over and over. I don't love you anymore. She had lost count of how many times she'd told Ethan I don't love you anymore, so why did Ethan still shamelessly come crawling back? I have no more love left for you to hurt. I don't believe it. Ethan bent his straight spine, looking at her humbly, searching for an answer. Haven't we been doing just fine? We've known each other for over a decade, been together for 7 whole years. How can you suddenly say you don't love me anymore? Did you change your heart? His gaze grew heavy and somber. Laura simply stared back coldly, as if looking at a stranger. She knew that unless she gave him a clear explanation today, Ethan would keep pestering her relentlessly, like a stubborn stray dog that can't be shaken off. Then Laura relented, murmuring distractedly, "My heart has never changed." Ethan heard this, his eyes blazing with joy. Without a second thought, he pulled Laura into his arms, murmuring excitedly over and over, "I knew it, you still love me, don't you? Don't you?" Laura remained silent, as if acquiescing. At the end of the corridor, the quietly opened elevator now closed just as soundlessly. In the elevator, Caesar's pale face was filled with despair. Laura had no idea Caesar had ever been there. Held tightly by Ethan, she felt slightly breathless. "Ethan, you're holding me too tight, I can barely breathe." Ethan only then came to his senses and loosened his grip. In his line of sight, Laura's face was flushed crimson, her eyes moist and glistening, making his Adam's apple bob uncontrollably. Laura gasped a few times before lifting her gaze to meet his. "I haven't finished speaking, Ethan." Ethan was stunned, a bad premonition rising in his heart. Then he saw Laura calm herself and resolutely deliver her final verdict to him. "I never changed my heart, because I loved you until the moment I decided to leave you. But once I say we're breaking up, I'll never look back." Ethan felt his mind swing wildly between ecstasy and despair, leaving him utterly dazed. He could only mutter blankly, "Will you never look back again?" Laura nodded solemnly. "That's right, never looking back again." Ethan's eyes reddened completely in an instant, a rare loss of emotional control, something that had happened only a handful of times in his entire life. Laura let out a sigh. "Ethan, I have a few questions for you. If you can answer them, I'll forgive you." Ethan's eyes lit up immediately. "Ask away. I'll answer everything." Laura locked eyes with Ethan as she slowly posed her first question. "How many women have you cheated with during our 7 years together?" Straight to the heart, Ethan's face instantly turned deathly pale, his lips parted slightly, but suddenly no words would come out. Laura smiled mockingly. "Can't remember." "Can you?" She took a deep breath and asked again, "Out of all those dozens of times you stood me up, how many were because of other women?" Ethan clenched his jaw, fists tightly balled, remaining silent throughout. Laura closed her eyes briefly, her throat clogging as if stuffed with cotton, nearly suffocating. "Did you know, when we were dating, I once underwent major surgery." Her eyes reddened as well. Ethan, his pupils trembled as he looked at her in astonishment, finally speaking. Yet what came out was a feeble, "I don't know." Laura at this moment, it felt as if that boomerang from the past had pierced her heart once more. That same agony, she was tasting it again. "You know nothing because you don't even care." Laura's voice trembled. This was the one thing she still couldn't come to terms with. "Ethan, I have a tumor." "A tumor? How terrified do you think I was?" she accused Ethan repeatedly, completely drowning in despair. "These 7 years. I've managed everything for you, handled all matters big and small at home and in the company. Have you forgotten that I can get tired too, that my body can also break down? But where were you then? You were with another woman, you were cheating, in our own house, on our own bed, you were sleeping with someone else." Laura finally said it aloud. She shamefully closed her eyes, her entire body trembling. How could she possibly remain calm all the time, as she lay on the operating table, staring at the bright lights shining directly on her, her consciousness slowly slipping away? She had also been afraid, what if she closed her eyes and never woke up again? But she didn't dare to be afraid, because she knew she only had herself left. If even she succumbed to fear, she wouldn't be able to keep going. So she could only grit her teeth and tough it out. But she was truly exhausted. She also longed for someone to shield her from the storm and stand in front of her. Ethan was not her destined one, he was merely a good-looking scoundrel. Laura snapped back to reality, her gaze icy. "So, Ethan, don't show up in front of me again. Let's part on good terms." Ethan left. He walked away sobbing uncontrollably. Laura rolled her eyes fiercely and then slammed the door shut. She couldn't comprehend at all Ethan's heart-wrenching sobs, just as she never understood whether his persistent pursuit stemmed from lingering affection or mere habit. Habit, indeed, a word so hard to break, woven by time, enriched by memory. Quitting it is no easier than severing one's own hand. Yet Laura managed to ruthlessly break every habit tied to Ethan. She no longer wanted to lose herself in the whirlpool, she wanted to break free, to be liberated. And so she willingly chose to start anew. "It will be all right, everything will be all right." A week passed. Laura still didn't reach out to Caesar, nor did she want to contact him. Coincidentally, a university in the city was holding a campus festival, and she decided to see if there were any promising new talents in painting. When she arrived at the painting section of the campus festival, she examined each piece one by one. This one showed a bit of amateurish technique. This one lacked emotional depth. This painting makes absolutely no sense. After looking at everyone's paintings, Laura couldn't help but sigh. I've really been spoiled by Caesar's paintings. These all look so amateurish in comparison. Laura turned to leave when she noticed someone standing right beside her. Caesar. He was dressed in a well-tailored suit, gazing at the painting with a serious expression. His once curly hair had been straightened, and even his brown locks were dyed black, combed back to reveal his smooth forehead. His striking features now leaped directly into Laura's eyes with overwhelming intensity. After a week apart, Caesar seemed like a completely different person. Laura felt all the hidden knots in her heart surge up the moment she saw him. Caesar, why he was angry with her, why he cared so much about the painting. She wanted to know it all, including what exactly he had been doing all week. Why is there no news at all? And why does it feel like you've become a different person when you reappeared? Caesar seemed to sense something and turned to look at her. He smiled lightly, a proper smile. Yet it made Laura feel inexplicably like something was missing. Laura, long time no see. Laura looked complicated, but still replied with an awkward smile. What have you been up to this week? Caesar showed no trace of emotion, merely turning his head to look at the painting. Did you come here to find a new painter? Are you planning to replace me? I heard the painter you hired was involved in plagiarism. Why didn't you come to me? Is it because you think I'm childish? 4 consecutive questions, each one leaving Laura speechless. Yes, she had come here to find a new painter. After all, with Caesar missing, she had no choice but to find someone new to fill the position. But this wasn't her fault. Laura silently gazed at Caesar without responding to his words. Instead, she asked, "What about you? How did you know I was here?" Caesar raised an eyebrow. He didn't dare admit that while learning etiquette this past week, he'd been secretly stalking Laura's life through WeChat. When he noticed Laura showing signs of seeking a new painter, he couldn't wait and chased after her here. He hadn't forgotten that Laura's preferred man had that prematurely aged look about him. Since Laura liked that type, he could easily mimic the appearance. For her sake, he was willing to become anything. Thus, even though Caesar was inwardly thrilled, he maintained his composure, offering only a faint smile, just passing by. Laura, her intuition told her that Caesar was definitely up to something, so without a word, she turned and walked away. Laura, Caesar instantly lost his composure and tightly grabbed her arm. A pair of eyes glistened with moisture, as if pleading for her mercy. Laura, don't go, okay? Laura thought Caesar could at least hold out for a few more days before breaking down. Little did she expect that just a few steps away would force Caesar to drop his act. His hand, wanting to clutch yet not daring to tighten, was even trembling. Laura felt like crying but had no tears left. She wasn't that terrifying, was she? Caesar, if you can't speak properly, then we really have nothing more to say, she threatened fiercely. When I get back to the company, I'll transfer your contract to someone else and never come to see you again. Caesar's pupils trembled violently. Don't, I'll talk. After holding it in for a long while, he finally said, I went to school this week. School? You're in grad school. Laura sounded surprised. Caesar flushed and said quietly, no, it was teaching me life skills, how to be a proper adult. As if afraid Laura wouldn't believe him, he added, you can test me. Now I can do more than just fix pipes, I can even cook for Buddy. Trust me. Caesar's eyes widened into perfect circles. Laura's palms itched with the urge to pinch his cheeks hard. So this is why you've been avoiding me, Caesar replied pitifully. Chad said it'd create more contrast this way. He lowered his gaze, his voice inexplicably dropping again. And it's not like I didn't go to your place to look for you, it's just that day. You were with some guy, you were even hugging. Laura was stunned. Only then did she recall that earlier scene with Ethan at the door. Never imagining it would inadvertently hurt someone else. There's nothing between us. She could only manage to say it so dryly now, yet Caesar's eyes suddenly lit up. Really, if he had a tail, it would surely be wagging furiously behind him now. Really, Laura couldn't help but let a faint smile surface, then immediately pursed her lips tightly. But you ignored me for no reason and gave me the cold shoulder. I'm still a bit upset about that. She reined in her smile, determined to settle this matter with him once and for all. Little did she know, Caesar had the exact same intention. With a serious expression, he extended a direct invitation. Would you like to come home with me? Laura let out a surprised ah, bewildered at how things had inexplicably progressed to this stage. Then she saw Caesar staring intently at her. Didn't you want to know the reason? Come home with me, and I'll tell you. 1 week later, Laura found herself at the Lin family home once again. Chad isn't here. Caesar said he went grocery shopping. As soon as they arrived at the villa, Caesar hurriedly led Laura to his room. Laura blushed crimson, murmuring this isn't proper while obediently following him to his room. After opening the door, Caesar quickly locked it behind them. Laura panicked slightly. Caesar, what are you doing? I just want to know the reason. It doesn't mean I accept. Caesar completely ignored her, pulling her hand toward the bed again. The next moment, he stripped off his clothes right in front of Laura. Laura instinctively closed her eyes. In the darkness, only Caesar's gentle voice could be heard. Laura, look at me. As if compelled by some unseen force, Laura slowly opened her eyes. She expected to see his sculpted physique, but instead, Caesar's powerful torso was covered with horrifying scars, each one a sight that shocked her to the core. At this moment, Laura's vision blurred. Even her throat ached with sorrow and grief. Caesar's body was covered in wounds large and small. Who knows how many blows it took to leave him like this? Who could be so cruel as to inflict such violence upon another? Caesar gazed as Laura's eyes gradually reddened, yet he felt nothing. He took her hand directly and pressed it against his scar. I never dared to tell you, but the truth is I'm the Lin family's illegitimate child. My very birth was a mistake. I can't be listed in their so-called family registry, nor can I live an ordinary life like normal people. My mother hoped to marry into the Lin family through me, but no one ever acknowledged my identity. She refused to accept defeat, so she kept me locked away day after day. At the slightest provocation, she would take her anger out on me. In that household, I had no right to education. No one even knew I had ever lived there. Chad only found me in the old villa district after my mother died. By then, I had already become a troubled child. I couldn't communicate with outsiders, didn't even know how to eat properly because my mother never gave me chopsticks. She liked watching me eat with my hands. She said she wanted to turn me into a worthless wreck, that this was her revenge. I didn't understand the meaning behind her words, but hearing them so often, I memorized them. Later, she died by suicide. The Lin family gave me no money, so Chad had to sell my paintings to make ends meet. Somehow, many people started coming to me for artwork. The Lin family found out and took me in. They made me paint every single day, one painting after another, and told others that I was a legitimate son of the Lin family, that they were proud of me, and even let me live in such a nice villa. Laura, it feels like my life is only about painting, and my worth is only in painting. So I'm afraid, what if I can't paint anymore, or if someone paints better than me? Will you abandon me, just like they abandoned me? Caesar gripped her hand tightly, as if he wanted to press it into his own chest, to let her know his true feelings. Laura finally learned the truth, why he lacked a sense of security, why he kept himself tightly locked away, allowing no one in or out. But Caesar was such a good person. He had never hurt anyone, nor had he ever resented anyone for it. The only thing he feared was that she might not want him. Laura didn't know what to say at this moment. Her entire heart stiffened. Tasting the thick sorrow, she blinked, and teardrops as large as beans rolled down. Caesar gently stroked it, his fingertips damp. He said with great seriousness, Laura, don't cry for me. Someone once said that the first step for a woman to fall in love with a man is to feel sorry for him. Laura was feeling melancholic when Caesar pulled this stunt, leaving her torn between laughter and tears. So, you don't want me to fall in love with you? She teased him on purpose. Caesar blushed instantly. The fingers that had remained motionless while speaking of childhood now quietly curled together again. It's not impossible, just a thought I had. Laura gave a quiet and said no more. The two gazed at each other, wordless yet completely understood in this moment, whether it was his clumsy yet meticulous care for her before his confession, or his foolish attempts to learn and transform himself into another person, just so she could accept him as normal. All of this made Laura's heart flutter, but it was merely a fleeting flutter of the heart. Laura had been in a relationship that lasted 15 years. She developed a crush on her classmate Ethan during her first year of high school. It was love at first sight, yet also affection that grew with time. She was infatuated with the Ethan of her imagination. Chasing after him persistently for 15 long years, she watched him fall in love, break up, work, and grow, accompanying him as he matured, evolved, and rose to prominence. She grew accustomed to giving, accustomed to remaining unseen. After finally shifting her gaze from others to focusing solely on herself, was she really going to dive into another romance, especially when the one who stirred her heart was such an extraordinary presence? Laura dared not gamble. She feared Caesar might become the next Ethan, and she no longer had another 15 years to squander on someone. If possible, she would rather choose someone less remarkable, someone she didn't love as much, and live out her days in quiet peace. Choosing Caesar means choosing another path no less arduous than that of Ethan. Laura gazed into Caesar's clear eyes, hesitating, unable to take that step. She chose to gently embrace Caesar, whispering to him, "Caesar, I don't have the strength to love anyone right now. Could you grow a little more for me? Grow until you can shelter her from the storm, then come back to court her." Caesar understood her unspoken words, his entire body tensing up. Then, he hugged Laura tightly, as if trying to press her into his very bones. "Okay, I will. I'll strive to become the person you imagine. You must wait for me." In the endless silence, he humbly added, "It's fine if you don't wait, but when I return, please do consider me." Laura had no reason to refuse anymore. She sighed softly and said, "All right." Caesar went abroad. Before going abroad, he repeatedly reminded her, "I'm just going to live independently for a few years to pursue a master's degree. Don't you dare think I won't come back. If you miss me, you must message me on WeChat, no matter how late it is." Laura looked helpless but teased with a smile. What good would messaging do? "Would you really drop out and come back to keep me company?" She was only joking, but she saw Caesar nod emphatically. "Of course," he answered quickly, making the choice almost without thinking. Perhaps in his heart, love was simply love, nothing else in the world could compare to it. He had never had it before, so once he obtained it, he would stubbornly cling to it without letting go. Laura once asked him, "Why did you choose to like me? Specifically, what if, after meeting more people, you one day feel these few months together meant nothing? I don't have particularly outstanding looks, nor any extraordinary abilities. Why, among all the countless people, did you single me out at first glance?" Back then, Caesar was forced to learn cooking by her because he couldn't eat Chinese food while abroad. Hearing this, he casually waved a spatula in one hand while holding a frying pan in the other, saying, "No particular reason, I just knew at first sight. If you don't believe me, you can ask Buddy. Everyone thinks it was Buddy who walked out the door and approached you. But actually, it was me on the steps. The moment I saw you, I let go of Buddy and told him to go to you." He wrinkled his nose and suddenly laughed. "Otherwise, why do you think a cat you'd never met before would act so affectionate and cute with you? The one who ever wanted you to stay was always just me." Laura couldn't remember how she reacted in that moment. Perhaps she was shocked, perhaps moved. Or maybe she broke down and rushed to Buddy, using petting it as an excuse to hide the turmoil in her heart. In any case, with Caesar, it seemed there was only ever one reason for everything. Because she is Laura, she deserves to be loved. This profound emotion, Laura doesn't know how long it can last, yet she still thinks with hopeful anticipation. She hopes it will be a lifetime. 2 years later, City HS's largest exhibition center is hosting a grand art exhibition today. The featured artist is the painter who stunned the world, Caesar. This is his first exhibition since returning to his homeland, and its uniquely vibrant scale has instantly attracted countless media reporters. Laura is currently trudging uphill in her 7-centimeter heels, panting heavily as she climbs. This path was only 800 meters long, yet the remaining 400 meters ahead looked like an insurmountable chasm. She had hailed a taxi early in the morning to get here, never expecting the driver would be in a hurry to pick up his next fare and simply drop her off by the roadside before driving away. Now she had no choice but to summon her strength and walk the last few hundred meters on her own. Suddenly, a car pulled over beside her. Laura flushed crimson as her eyes met the woman's gaze in the car. It was Alexandra, whom she hadn't seen in years. Laura instantly caught her breath and straightened her posture. Seeing Alexandra looking at her with a complicated expression, she blurted out instinctively, "I have a car, it's just hard to park here, so I took a taxi." Alexandra let out a light chuckle upon hearing this. She stepped out from the back seat of the car and stood beside her. "All right then, today I'll try eco-friendly travel for once." Laura was too exhausted to even comment. Only after arriving at the exhibition center did Alexandra get out of the car. What kind of eco-friendly travel is this? But her intuition told her Alexandra had something to say, so she silently agreed. The two walked side by side. In a way, they could be considered love rivals, yet they found themselves coexisting peacefully at this moment. Alexandra suddenly broke the silence. "Have you kept in touch with Ethan these past few years?" Laura paused, then shook her head decisively. "No contact. I made things clear with him long ago, and there's no reason for us to meet again, is there?" Alexandra gave a bitter smile. "You're the one who can let go so easily, breaking up cleanly without leaving any lingering thoughts." Laura raised an eyebrow and asked proactively, "So you're still involved with Ethan?" Alexandra hesitated, then nodded. "I can't bear to let go. After all these years of entanglement with him, I know perfectly well that I'm not the one he loves, yet I still can't bring myself to leave, even if his feelings for me have never been more than physical desire. I'm content with that." Laura fell silent. It's hard to judge. Alexandra seemed to know exactly what Laura was thinking. She took a deep breath and asked with difficulty, "But this is truly exhausting, Laura. If only Ethan loved me even half as much as he loves you, I wouldn't be this heartbroken." Laura suddenly halted in her tracks. Alexandra also stopped immediately behind her. "You know what? After you left, Ethan became a completely different person. He stopped being a womanizer and never went out with other women, but when he was with me, there wasn't an ounce of sincerity in his heart. He'd rather stay at his gastric health foundation than spend any intimate time with me." Laura's pupils trembled violently. She couldn't help but turn to look at Alexandra, asking with immense difficulty, "What foundation did you say?" Alexandra looked slightly surprised, then understanding, "You don't follow him, so naturally you wouldn't know." 2 years ago, Ethan suddenly established a free foundation for patients with gastric tumors. He said he was doing it to atone for his sins. Absurd, utterly absurd. Laura found it both laughable and yet thought if this could help patients suffering like her in this world, it might still be a blessing. So she said nothing, just looked at Alexandra with complex emotions, finally forcing out a few words through clenched teeth after a long silence. "Accumulating blessings through good deeds is quite admirable." Alexandra let out a self-deprecating laugh. "It is admirable indeed. He's become a great philanthropist now, beloved by all. But I know, in his heart, he's never been lonelier, yet he won't let me in. His heart belongs only to you." Laura wondered what depth of emotion could compel Alexandra to confess, in her presence, that her own boyfriend loved her. She was speechless, silently continuing her ascent. Alexandra followed, her words never ceasing. "Laura, do you think I should stay with him?" "I don't know," Laura replied in a muffled voice. "Only you can decide about your feelings for him." Alexandra fell silent for a few seconds before asking again, "But Ethan only has you in his heart." Laura glanced at her sideways. "So, are you here to pick a fight with me?" Alexandra shook her head, her tone wavering. "No, I just happened to run into you. Suddenly, I couldn't understand, why would someone like Ethan finally settle down for you?" Laura felt an inexplicable arrow pierce her knee. Alexandra even whimsically remarked, "Sometimes I wonder, if I stayed with him for 7 years, would he love me like that too?" Laura felt her anger rising uncontrollably, unable to bear it any longer. She turned to glare at Alexandra, ready to lash out, yet what met his eyes was Alexandra's bloodshot eyes paired with an expression of startling clarity. In an instant, her anger dissipated completely. Alexandra had already made up her mind, she simply couldn't bear to let go, just like her younger self. Lost in the fog, unable to discern the way forward, desperately hoping someone would reach out a helping hand, but until she emerged from the mist, battered and bruised. That warm hand never came to meet her. Now, Alexandra is the same. She too longs for someone to pull her back, to tell her that this is wrong, that she should turn around. Laura closed her eyes briefly, and when she opened them again, she had regained her composure. "It won't come to that," she replied word by word with certainty. "Ethan will never love only one woman. He won't love you, nor does he love me. What he loves is simply a girlfriend who can live entirely for him alone. It doesn't matter who that person is. You can stay by his side until he transfers that title to you. But from that day on, you will no longer be Alexandra. You'll become the next me, the next person to completely lose themselves." Laura gazed coldly at Alexandra. If she remains this obstinate even now, then she's truly beyond saving. Alexandra seemed momentarily stunned. When she regained her composure, she gave a bitter smile. "Thank you. I know what to do now." Laura gave a slight nod. Coincidentally, the two arrived at the exhibition center. Laura headed toward the entrance. Alexandra walked toward the adjacent exhibition. They parted at the doorway, and from then on, never saw each other again. It's said that Alexandra eventually went abroad, all alone. No one ever learned the details of her previous marriage abroad, though vague rumors suggested she had finally found the love of her life. And the kind who loved only her, of course. These were all stories told much later. But now, Laura had more pressing matters to attend to meet her good friend whom she hadn't seen for 2 years, Caesar. Laura was busy entering the main hall, thus failing to notice the burning gaze fixed upon her from somewhere in the exhibition room since her arrival. Caesar stared intently at Laura, his eyes never leaving her since she appeared. He kept watching her like this, as if determined to make up for all the missed moments of these 2 years at once. Meanwhile, Laura scattered her gaze, searching every corner of the exhibition hall for traces of Caesar. She even lowered her head to call him, but unfortunately, no one answered. Anxiety flickered between her brows. This was the first time in years she had lost contact with Caesar for so long, ever since Caesar sent her the message about returning home a day ago and tossed her this address. He had cut off contact under the pretext of taking off. Laura timed her call perfectly, but his phone was still turned off. She thought Caesar's phone had run out of battery, but now it was clear that wasn't the reason. After all, Caesar had always made an effort to reply within a few hours. even when he was abroad with several time zones between them. Sometimes she even suspected Caesar had set special notifications for her. Otherwise, how could he reply Caesar the moment her message was sent? He lacked a sense of security, needing their communication even more than Laura did. After 2 years, Laura couldn't help but be moved by Caesar's persistent devotion, reluctant as she was. But at this critical moment, Laura couldn't find him anywhere. She angrily approached a staff member. "Excuse me, where is Caesar?" The staff member scratched his head, looking puzzled. "Caesar, I don't know who Caesar is." Laura clicked her tongue in frustration and was about to leave when the staff member hesitantly added, "Never mind about Caesar for now. Do you know there's been a man watching you from the corner behind you this whole time?" She raised an eyebrow and suddenly felt relieved. Was it a man about 6 feet tall, with curly brown hair? The staff member looked surprised. "How did you know? Do you have eyes in the back of your head?" Laura let out a light laugh and said somewhat smugly, "Just a guess." As she spoke, she seemed completely unhurried, even beginning to wander leisurely in front of the painting. The staff member asked curiously, "Aren't you in a hurry to find Caesar anymore?" Laura replied with certainty, "I believe he'll come looking for me on his own, I'm sure of it." The staff member was momentarily stunned. He also smiled and replied, "All right then, I'll take my leave first." Laura nodded and stopped looking at him, focusing instead on the paintings on the wall. Caesar has indeed made significant progress during these years abroad. If 2 years ago, Caesar was still a youth who painted recklessly relying solely on talent, now he has become a genius painter capable of mastering his brushstrokes. Gradually, Laura became completely absorbed in the painting, not to mention Caesar hiding behind her. Even if Caesar were right beside her now, she might not have the mind to speak with him. "Laura, is the painting really that captivating? Enough to make you forget about looking for me?" Suddenly, a mature male voice sounded from behind Laura. She curled her lips. The fish had taken the bait. "Indeed, this painting is far better than people. At least it won't hide and make me search high and low." Laura turned her head slowly, finally coming face to face with Caesar. The moment their eyes met, sparks flew and passion ignited like wildfire. Caesar has truly matured so much compared to 2 years ago. At least now he's learning to conceal his emotions. Laura gazed at him so directly that he actually felt somewhat unfamiliar. And this wasn't just due to Caesar's more imposing appearance than before. Even his relaxed demeanor in every movement was no longer the same Caesar as before. He truly listened to Laura's words and grew up properly into an adult capable of shielding her from the storm. No unnecessary words were spoken. A single glance was enough for them to understand each other perfectly. Laura was the first to look away. "Won't you introduce me to your paintings? This is actually my first time seeing your exhibition." Caesar stepped closer with a low chuckle. "Very well. Then I'll graciously accept." Laura followed Caesar like this through the entire exhibition. All along the way, she lost count of the praises she overheard, each word crystal clear, until she even began swelling with pride herself. As I reached the entrance, I encountered the staff member from earlier again. He looked at Caesar in surprise, as if realizing something, then suddenly broke into a smile and said, "You must be Caesar, the star of today's exhibition and this young lady's boyfriend." Laura hadn't even said a word yet when Caesar admitted to everything first. "Yeah, that's all me. What about it?" He eyed the staff warily, not forgetting that this very staff member had spent several minutes communicating with Laura earlier. But the staff member broke into a smile and said, "It's nothing, just confirming something. Also, today is Valentine's Day. Happy Valentine's Day to you both." With that, he took out a rose from the box in front of him. "This is a complimentary gift from the exhibition. Please accept it." Laura blushed instantly. She took the flowers, clutching them in her palm until they grew slightly damp with sweat. Caesar immediately softened toward him. "Thank you for your blessing, we will." With that, he took Laura's hand and walked out of the exhibition hall. Laura was being led along, her heartbeat continuously accelerating. She looked up at Caesar, and seeing no reaction from him, immediately felt somewhat displeased. But then she noticed his crimson-tipped earlobes, and all that displeasure melted into delight. Only then could she be certain that Caesar was still Caesar, that unchanged, easily flustered little painter. The two of them walked hand in hand all the way to the very bottom. A car stopped in front of them. Caesar pulled her into the vehicle without a second thought. As soon as they sat down, a hoarse voice came from the passenger seat. "MS, Laura, long time no see." Laura looked excitedly at Chad. "Long time no see." Chad. Caesar had been abroad for how long? Chad followed suit for just as long. Laura could only occasionally hear about Chad's recent situation from Caesar's words. Then, Chad leapt out with a dark shadow in his arms. Laura was even more delighted and quickly hugged it. "Buddy, you came too." She displayed an unprecedented level of excitement. Caesar saw this and inexplicably grew jealous. He moved closer to Laura and hugged her tightly. Laura, why do I feel like you're happier to see Buddy than you are to see me? Laura stiffened. She hadn't expected Caesar to notice such details. So, is it true that men's IQ drops to negative numbers when they're in love? Chad was naturally delighted to see the harmonious atmosphere between them and couldn't resist adding. So, MS, Laura is officially part of our family now. Laura hadn't even said anything yet when she felt the person holding her suddenly stiffen. Laura didn't plan to keep Caesar waiting any longer. She nodded decisively and said, "Yes, Caesar, Chad. And Buddy, from now on, you're all my family." After a moment of silence, Laura could even hear Caesar's breathing suddenly grow rapid, along with the intense pounding of his heartbeat. All of it seeped into her heart through the point where their skin touched. Laura tightly squeezed Caesar's hand in return and whispered, "You've waited 2 years for me. You've suffered." Caesar said nothing. He simply rested his head gently on her shoulder, and after a long while, murmured softly, "It's not hard, as long as it's you in the end." Laura pursed her lips into a smile, feeling completely at ease in her heart, and just like that, they fell in love. Caesar had originally thought that since he hadn't officially confessed his feelings yet, it didn't count as the first day. But Laura didn't want any unnecessary fuss, so she warned him in advance, no surprises, just keeping things simple and genuine. Caesar had no choice but to listen to her, yet the more time he spent with Laura, the more restless his heart became. Laura is now 32 years old. Her vision and experience far surpass those of Caesar. Caesar couldn't be certain he could make Laura love him forever. He can rely on his youth and looks to keep Laura now. But what if he grows old, or his face gets ruined, or Laura grows tired of his dull personality? Laura never easily says she loves him, even in bed, at the most intimate moments. Laura only gently kisses his cheek and says wearily, "Caesar, I really like you." Caesar doesn't want to be liked, he wants to be loved, and not just by anyone, but by Laura alone. Over the years, Laura had been thriving in her career, so she didn't devote much thought to Caesar. She treated him just as she had when Caesar was abroad, lukewarm and distant, only seeking him out when she remembered, until one day, Laura received news of an unexpected business trip. 3 days and 1 night, she hurried to the airport, only to accidentally drop her phone on the ground during security check. The screen went black instantly. Laura picked it up, fiddled with it for a while, and when it didn't respond, she simply stuffed it into her pocket. She still had a work phone, so she wasn't worried at all. Beneath such reasonable and justified actions lay her complete forgetting of Caesar. She merely asked a colleague to send Caesar a message about her business trip, saying nothing more. Thus, when Laura had settled her affairs and returned from abroad, her first stop was the repair shop to fix her phone. Within an hour, thanks to expedited service, the phone shop had repaired her device. Laura pressed the power button as she stepped out the door. The moment the internet connected, countless messages from Caesar kept popping up in the background. "Laura, why did I have to hear about you going abroad from someone else? Are you really leaving the country, or just avoiding me? Did I do something wrong? Why won't you answer my calls or reply to my messages? I'll change." "Okay, Laura, I'm begging you, don't leave me." "Okay, I really can't live without you. Are you abandoning me? Don't you want Buddy either?" "Laura, what do I even mean to you? Just some pet you can summon and dismiss at will." Laura read this with her heart rate spiraling out of control. Yet the next message was even more shocking. "Laura, did you ever truly love me?" Laura's pupils trembled. By this time, when she called Caesar, there was no answer. She hastily put away her phone and immediately rushed to the Lin family's residence. All the way, her heart burned with anxiety, wishing she could teleport to Caesar's side instantly. When they arrived outside the Lin family villa, only half an hour had passed. Laura, but it felt as long as a lifetime to her. After successfully entering the villa by entering the passcode, the first person she encountered was Chad, whose face was grim. Laura, knowing she was in the wrong, pursed her lips and was about to go upstairs when Chad stopped her. Laura, do you know how long the young master has been waiting for you? Even if it's a breakup, you can't just disappear without a single phone call." Chad grew angrier as he spoke, his chest heaving visibly, his complexion turning even more unpleasant. Laura hurriedly explained, "That's not the case, my phone was shattered. Being abroad made repairs impossible, which is why I couldn't contact Caesar. But I did ask a colleague to inform Caesar about this. Why is he so upset?" Chad finally looked less hostile after hearing the explanation. He stepped aside and said gravely, "Go on up. Don't turn on the lights immediately after entering. The young master hasn't eaten or had lights on for days, let him adjust first." Laura felt her heart instantly gripped by an invisible hand upon hearing these words. No food for days, no lights on. "Caesar, are you trying to starve yourself to death?" Laura didn't even have time to exchange a few more words with Chad before rushing upstairs in haste. When she reached Caesar's bedroom door, she pounded on it and shouted, "Caesar, I'm back, open the door for me. Will you, let me in?" She clearly heard the commotion inside in an instant, and knew perfectly well that Caesar was right behind the door at this moment, yet he wouldn't open the door. He was truly furious. This was Caesar's first time getting angry at her, resolutely refusing to see her. Laura's heart wrenched violently, even finding it hard to breathe. Only a door separated her from Caesar, yet she had let things come to this. Suddenly, Caesar's cold voice came from behind the door. "Leave, after all, I'm just a dispensable presence to you. You take all the benefits. You play with me when you're happy and toss me aside when you're not." His voice choked up again, hoarse to the point of being unpleasant. Laura had truly ended up hoist with her own petard this time. No matter how she coaxed Caesar outside the door, he refused to open it, rejecting her again and again with that raspy voice. Laura had no choice but to remember what Chad had said, that he hadn't eaten in ages. She turned and headed for the kitchen, determined to make him something, even if it was just getting him to drink more water. But when she went downstairs and entered the kitchen, several plates were stacked in the kitchen sink. Laura couldn't help but step closer for a look. Dried rice grains and pale yellow egg clung to the plates. It was the first dish she taught Caesar to make, fried rice with egg. Her nose suddenly stung with the threat of tears. At this moment, a vision of Caesar even appeared before her eyes, red-eyed, standing in the kitchen. Missing her while making fried rice with eggs, Chad had somehow appeared behind her again. "Miss Laura, did you know, during the years the young master was abroad, it was this fried rice that got him through one difficult day after another?" Laura, her pupils trembled. She cried out as if losing her voice. "What? Just by relying on a plate of fried rice, he endured for 2 years." Chad nodded slowly. At this moment, he was no longer in the role of a butler, but as Caesar's elder. Sincerely pleading with Laura, "Miss Laura, if you love him, could you give him a little more love? Stop teasing and ignoring him. Can you promise me that?" Laura couldn't utter a word. What could she say? That she had loved another man for 15 years, and that experience had left her afraid to give of herself again. She said that even if she were to love someone again now, it wouldn't be as intense as before, had her passion long since faded. But how could she bring herself to say such a thing? Caesar, his scorching love melted her entire heart, leaving her utterly captivated. She no longer had any will to resist. Laura remained silent for a long while before suddenly nodding and saying, "I will, even if it's difficult. I'll love him with all I have." Seeing Chad's eyes glisten with moisture, she quickly turned away and ran back upstairs. This time, even if Caesar didn't open the door, she would hack it with an axe or kick it down. No matter what, she would reach Caesar's side, no matter what method. But when Laura reached the second floor, she saw Caesar's door slightly ajar, and Caesar himself darting back into the room at lightning speed. Laura allowed a faint smile to curl at the corners of her mouth. She knew it, Caesar couldn't hold out for long. Hearing the sound of her departure, he must have instantly bristled, cautiously following her to the stairwell. Stealing glances at her with sorrowful, damp eyes, afraid she might leave, yet not uttering a word, Laura let out a long sigh, pushed slightly harder, and opened Caesar's half-closed door. Inside was pitch black, nothing could be seen. Caesar didn't turn on the lights or open the curtains, shutting himself in complete darkness. Waiting alone for Laura. If she doesn't come, is he going to keep going on like this? Laura could hardly bear to think about it, yet there was nothing she could do. She walked to the bedside and gently lifted Caesar's blanket, lying down beside him. At first, Caesar clutched the blanket tightly, refusing to let her in. Laura needed only the slightest effort to tear away his pretentious facade. Lying behind him, she couldn't help but embrace him tightly from behind. After just a few days apart, she even felt that Caesar had grown thinner, with no flesh left under her hands. "Caesar, why haven't you been taking care of yourself?" Her voice was full of heartache, and the obvious affection made Caesar stiffen all over. He kept his back turned to her the whole time, and after a long pause, he finally spoke hoarsely. "So what? It's not like you care anyway." Laura grew anxious upon hearing this and tightened her grip even more. "Caesar, look at me." That was all she said. Caesar sighed over there, then seemed to relent as he turned to look at her. Laura met Caesar's eyes in the darkness. They were still bright, yet bloodshot. As if he hadn't slept well for days, Laura's heart was immediately filled with a sour ache. Her hand involuntarily reached out to caress Caesar's face, tracing from his eyebrows, eyes, all the way down to his lips, every inch. She kept stroking tenderly. Gradually, Caesar's breathing grew heavier in the darkness. His restless eyes brimmed with new, agitated emotions, and he couldn't help but edge closer. Yet reason still held him, and he struggled to lie further away. He only wanted one answer. "Laura, where have you been these past few days?" Laura kept drawing nearer, softly whispering the truth to him. Caesar widened his eyes slightly, and after a long pause, said with a hint of grievance, "Your colleague only mentioned you were going abroad for a few days, not that you couldn't contact me because your phone was broken." In the darkness, his voice carried an inexplicable note of grievance. "I really thought you didn't want to see me anymore. That's why you left the country without saying a word." Laura only now realized how much insecurity had been lurking in Caesar's heart all this time, yet he never spoke a word, playing the role of her understanding boyfriend, appearing wherever she needed him. Yet he couldn't heal himself. Laura let out a heavy sigh. If not for this incident, who knows how long it would have taken for them to untangle their emotional knots. For some reason, she recalled that Cold War with Caesar years ago. Caesar also arrived alone at her doorstep, saw her embracing Ethan, and without saying a word, just walked away. Did he start believing from that moment onward that he was always her second choice? "Caesar, have I ever told you how much I love you?" For no apparent reason, perhaps because the moonlight was beautiful tonight. Or perhaps because the moment was right. Laura in the darkness, taking advantage of the profound silence, she suddenly confessed her feelings. She could feel Caesar's body stiffen abruptly. "You once said you fell in love with me at first sight. As for me, my affection grew with time. You're such a wonderful person, quietly appearing by my side whenever I'm sad, learning to love this world through the things I cherish. Through your eyes, I can see worlds of different landscapes. And they all make me feel happy, every moment with you. I'm no longer as tense as before. You let me be myself, just myself. I'm truly grateful to you. This has long been an irreplaceable feeling. Caesar, you should be more confident. You've long been in my heart, not a replacement for anyone. You're just yourself." After saying this long string of words, Laura felt her mouth go dry. She looked up, leaned closer to Caesar, and gently pressed a kiss upon his lips. Yet it was like a single spark igniting a haystack. Caesar's eyes blazed with sudden desire as he flipped over, pinning Laura beneath him. He gasped uncontrollably, but out of sheer joy, joy that perseverance had finally been rewarded, joy that his efforts were no longer solitary, joy that the days ahead could now be walked steadily hand in hand with Laura. He buried his face in Laura's shoulder, his warm breath tickling her skin. "Laura, do you know, I really love you so much." Laura wanted to say something more, but was swept away by Caesar's endless kiss. That night, the red plum tree in the small courtyard swayed back and forth, as the icy wind outside relentlessly blew against its stamens, penetrating deep into its blossom heart, becoming one with its floral fragrance. The rain, too, fell in wave after wave. No one knew when it would stop. It just kept beating against the flower buds. It wasn't until the small hours that the onslaught finally began to subside. The next day brought unusually fine weather, such as early spring alternating between warmth and chill in unpredictable turns. Laura wore a thick cotton coat, walking hand in hand with Caesar in the small garden. Behind them, the cheerful Chad carried Buddy. Buddy licked his fur, his round eyes fixed on the couple ahead. At this moment, they resembled the most ordinary family of four, choosing to enjoy a spring outing on the weekend. Laura couldn't help but chuckle softly at the thought. She looked up at Caesar, then glanced back at Chad and Buddy, feeling a satisfaction she'd never known before. Caesar immediately lowered his head to look at her and asked gently, "What's wrong?" Laura shook her head with a smile, only to see him break into a silly grin too. The spring breeze was warm and gentle. Laura was led like this by Caesar's scorching hand. Walking deep into the park, they tread across the damp, soft lawn all the way, walking toward the spring warmth, blooming flowers, and all things growing, walking toward the future she once thought she could never have again, growing old with someone by her side. The end.